Chapter 1240. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes. The vast ancient path was indeed a bit mysterious. He had only just entered this place, but he had already encountered a Demon King realm Demon King. It was hard to say what they would encounter if they continued to move forward. Perhaps he could even unlock a few gods from here. Thinking of this, he prepared to take another step forward. However, the heroes behind him did not agree with him. "Boy, I advise you to quickly retreat. In this place, you're lucky that you didn't die just now. Now, you want to directly charge forward. Do you know that you're simply courting death?" Lin Yuan did not pay attention to these guys. He lightly snorted. Then he glanced at Iron Egg and asked, "Are you satisfied with this guy?" He was naturally referring to the little boy Iron Egg's bodyguard. However, Iron Egg shook his head. "I want to rely on my own strength to convince my own bodyguard. This way, it's meaningless to me." Lin Yuan smiled slightly and nodded. "Boy, you have some ambition." Finally, he took Iron Egg's hand and continued forward. However, the heroes behind them clearly could not control their emotions. They shouted as they moved forward. "Don't go any further. If you really encounter any problems, I can't guarantee that we can save you." After he finished speaking, Lin Yuan gently waved his hand. "There's no need for that. Just wait for your god to arrive." These humans could naturally become bodyguards, but they were too weak. They could not even hold up the front. However, the Demon King in front of them coldly snorted. "What do you think this place is? It's as if you've stepped into an uninhabited place. If you continue to charge forward, I won't be polite." Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows and glanced at the Demon King. "I've never asked you to be polite." His words were instantly choked. The Demon King could not speak at all. Good. In that case, I'll show you what a Demon King's strength is." His body suddenly swelled up. At this moment, he seemed to have used the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. Looking at this scene, Lin Yuan only shook his head indifferently. Even Bruiser couldn't stand it anymore. He said to the Archfiend, "I can't stand your tricks. Don't show it anymore. I don't like Archfiends like you." His words almost made the Medicine King's nose crooked from anger. Did this brat think that he wanted to show him his strength so that he could be promoted to be his bodyguard? He was courting death. He was simply courting death. To think that this Fiend King dared to provoke him in such a manner when he was not as strong as the Fiend King. Various thoughts flashed through the minds of the brave warriors. They had already decided not to make any more moves. Furthermore, they did not want to help the two people behind the high ground who did not know what was going on. However, what they didn't expect was that, although the Demon King was huge and had even extended his large hand to slap down, Lin Yuan had actually swatted it away as if he was swatting a fly. He raised his hand. A rainbow-colored light instantly appeared on his hand. At this moment, all the light gathered on his wrist. In the next second, Lin Yuan only covered the Demon King's body with this light. The lawful embodiment of heaven and earth could no longer be used. The Medicine King's strong body was originally like a mountain. At this moment, his body actually started to fall. Seeing this, Lin Yuan smiled gently. "If you are willing to kneel down and submit to me, I can give you a chance to live." He was not joking. To him, the life and death of a Demon King did not matter at all. Moreover, this guy was not even as good as the Desert Wolf Demon King from before. At least, he did not stand out among the Demon Kings. This meant that he was definitely not as good as the Desert Wolf Demon King. But after he said this, the Demon King, who was as strong as an ape, suddenly slapped his chest. A loud sound reverberated through the entire vast ancient path. "I have never been so aggrieved in my life. You want to attack me at this time? No way." He had already roared. At this moment, all the Demon Kings began to cover their ears involuntarily. They could not withstand this powerful roar. However, Lin Yuan did not move at all. Not only him, but even Tai Dan, who was beside him, did not react. "So what if you are loud?" Being loud does not mean you can defeat us. Tai Dan had already taken a step forward. At this moment, he seemed to be prepared to fight with the Demon King to see who was stronger. But at this moment, the two forces collided. They directly entered the Demon King's body from behind. His roar was some kind of signal. At this moment, he was directly controlling himself to send a message to his companions, allowing his companions to inject power into his body. As soon as this happened, Lin Yuan snorted. Seeing that you can't deal with me, you actually went to find help? As soon as Lin Yuan's voice fell, he had already reached out to grab the other party. This time, not only was the Demon King unable to do anything, but the powerful power that had just been injected into his body actually started to dissipate. Lin Yuan then gently shook his hand, and all the power was injected into Tai Dan's body. Seeing this, the Demon King was stunned. He had not expected that the power he had just received would become someone else's gift in the next moment. Impossible, this is absolutely impossible. Who on earth are you? Why is it so easy for it to become part of my power? He shouted in disbelief. Lin Yuan did not pay any attention to him. On the other hand, Tai Dan's face was flushed red. It seemed that he could not withstand this power at all. Seeing this, Lin Yuan frowned. Previously, he had injected the power into Tai Dan's body so that Tai Dan could receive it. That was why he had used his own methods to open up the veins in Tai Dan's body. However, he had not expected this. Tai Dan could not withstand the Demon King's power at all. At this moment, the other heroes also came up to him. You can't do this. This little guy's body is not fully developed at all. Moreover, he can't digest such a huge amount of power. This is harming him. Lin Yuan frowned. Can't digest it? Then I'll change my method. Chapter 1241. The special power in his hand began to condense slowly. In an instant, the seven-colored light began to drill into Little Iron Egg's body. Lin Yuan hadn't expected that Little Iron Egg's body would actually have such a rejection reaction. However, this didn't stop him from becoming a god. At this moment, he condensed the power he had extracted into a golden egg in Little Iron Egg's body. This way, he could slowly absorb the power here as his killing intent art improved. Little Iron Egg's expression finally eased a little. He was stunned for a moment before he asked, Master, what kind of power did you just inject into my body? Why is it so magical? It's more than twice as powerful as the Demon King's power. Upon hearing this, Lin Yuan just shook his head gently and smiled without saying anything. When your power increases in the future and you become a god, you will know the key to this. After saying this, he continued to pull Little Iron Egg forward. However, they didn't walk far before the heroes could no longer keep up with their pace. The leader of the heroes looked at their backs and shook his head. It's a pity that they don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Otherwise, given their strength, it would be easy for them to achieve something. Boss, don't think so much. Their lives are not something we can control. After saying this, these people turned in another direction and began to slowly withdraw from the vast ancient path. In their opinion, these people's reckless actions had nothing to do with them. They could even foresee the future. However, they couldn't follow them inside now. After all, if something went wrong, it wouldn't be so easy to solve. At this moment, what they didn't know was that everything in the factory had already been destroyed. The statue of the Night Patrol god had been destroyed. This was simply an unpredictable thing for the people here. In their opinion, everything seemed to have become a foregone conclusion. Therefore, they weren't prepared to continue staying here. Rather than suffer the wrath of the Night Patrol god, they might as well start a new life somewhere else. They didn't want to be involved in this kind of thing anymore. However, when they saw the returning brave warriors, their eyes twitched violently. Did you guys recklessly go to the vast ancient path again? The city lord said directly. Upon hearing his words, the leader of the brave warriors stepped forward. That's right. However, there are already two people who don't know the difference between life and death on this vast ancient road. I think we should. Just as he finished speaking, he realized that the huge and towering statue of the god of night in the center of the city had collapsed. Not only that, the people in the city couldn't help but sigh. What's going on? Who destroyed this statue? They naturally knew that it was the desert wolf demon king, but he had always been protected by this statue. As long as the statue was in the desert, the wolf demon king could protect the people in the city and would not punish them for no reason. Their so-called resistance was only a resistance against the desert wolves. They did not dare to make any moves against the desert wolf demon king, because they were afraid that their anger would implicate the people in the city. But now, the statue had been destroyed. What else could have happened? 2 days ago, a young man came out of nowhere. He brought little iron egg with him and directly destroyed the statue of the god of night. When he finished speaking, there was a hint of light in the sky. Seeing this scene, everyone's hearts trembled slightly. Because in everyone's opinion, because there was a headquarters here, there were no special creatures that would come here. But now, they actually saw a desert eagle. This was good news for them. It also meant that their living environment had undergone a fundamental change. However, one of the heroes was slightly stunned. The young man that the people in the city are talking about, could it be the guy we just met on the vast ancient path? If it really is him, I'm afraid that there might be a turning point in this matter. If it weren't for the fact that they had no other choice, no one would want to leave their home. Leaving the place where they were born and raised for so many years, at this moment, everyone's thoughts began to move. They knew that this matter was out of the ordinary. However, they also understood that if they did not leave, they would attract the attention of the vast ancient path. At that time, they would incur the wrath of countless medicine kings. Of course, there was also the great archfiend king. Thinking of this, the hall master's expression became somewhat strange. Do you believe that this young man and little iron egg can really return from the vast ancient path alive? Moreover, they can bring back some good news. No one dared to speak, nor did they dare to answer. They could not say what kind of outcome this matter would ultimately lead to. If they could really come back, then it would be fine. But if they couldn't, then everything was equivalent to having no chance at all. On the other side, Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. Their path had been blocked by some black iron towers. Lin Yuan's expression was somewhat hesitant. What is this place? Because he could already sense that there was no way to deal with the demonic qi in the iron towers. It was as if they were suddenly cut off from the world. Lin Yuan frowned, but in the next second, little iron egg had already taken 2 steps forward. The black tower rose into the sky. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan shook his head gently. Master, this place seems a little strange. Why don't we go in and take a look? This place can't be entered as we wish, he said indifferently. He could tell that this place was a little strange. Moreover, he could sense that the aura that appeared at this moment should have a special kind of strange power. The inside of the black tower was like a breathing person. Normally, they would constantly breathe in and out, and then some power would seep out. When he sensed this, Lin Yuan slightly narrowed his eyes. At this moment, the door of the black tower finally opened. A majestic suction force directly sucked the 2 of them into the tower. Lin Yuan was a little surprised. He did not expect that this place was the Black Tower. It was actually so strange that he was directly sucked in without even sensing it. However, in the next second, all his thoughts were focused. He could see the weight of the Black Tower. The various characters that appeared on the first floor. It was so strange. It even seemed a little ethereal. Chapter 1242. Little Iron Egg couldn't react at all. What was going on? He even felt that the Black Tower in front of him shouldn't be anything special. From his point of view, everything here seemed to have appeared in his dream. Seeing this, Lin Yuan's expression finally changed. He could see that these were some special summoning arrays. As long as you touched the array's portrait, something would come out. Little Iron Egg sighed faintly. Master, there seems to be something special hiding here. Do you want me to go check it out first? Lin Yuan nodded slightly. It could be seen that the things built in this black tower shouldn't be so simple. However, even if the things here were very tyrannical, so what? With his cultivation and strength, it shouldn't be so difficult to crush the things here. But at this moment, just as Lin Yuan's thought appeared, a flash of light appeared. Then, everything in the black tower appeared before their eyes. Those characters seemed to come alive at this moment. Seeing this, Lin Yuan shook his head slightly. It seems that there are some special demon kings in this place. Before Little Iron Egg could walk forward, Lin Yuan pulled him back. Then he sighed softly. This thing isn't something you can deal with. Wait for it to show itself. As soon as his voice fell, the red light began to gather. The characters overlapped and appeared in front of them to suppress the three-headed hound. This three-headed hound wasn't smaller than the Desert Wolf Demon King. In fact, it was even bigger. Moreover, there were some special black flames burning on its body. When Lin Yuan saw this, he was slightly stunned. Is this the three-headed hound of hell? His mind began to move. If this was really the case, this place was really interesting. He smiled and took a step forward. However, the three-headed hound of hell directly spat out a mouthful of flames. Roar! A roar came out of its mouth. Immediately after, the entire ground was set ablaze by the flames. Little Iron Egg directly used his strength to block the flames. Lin Yuan really seemed to turn a blind eye to the flame. He gently stepped on the flame and walked forward from the flame step by step. I thought it was something amazing. So it's just a gatekeeper dog. Lin Yuan's words instantly angered the three-headed hound of hell. The three dog heads spat out flames directly at Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan didn't even try to dodge. He walked forward step by step. The flames could pass through his body. When Little Iron Egg saw this, he was stunned. He didn't expect his master to be so powerful. At this moment, Lin Yuan's hand touched one of the dog heads. He stroked it gently. Then he said, "How's that? Be obedient and follow me. Otherwise, I'll smash your head." After he finished speaking, the three-headed hellhound opened its mouth and started sucking on his arm. Lin Yuan took a step back. You really don't know what's good for you. He did have the strength to smash the dog's head. But at this moment, he slowly took a step forward and reached out to grab the hellhound's neck. With such a scale, the scene was extremely disharmonious. It was like a person grabbing an elephant. Moreover, the elephant looked huge, but it couldn't move at all. Seeing this, Lin Yuan's expression changed because he could feel that the head of the three-headed hound was separated from its body. To be exact, it was a long neck. It was like a python, stabbing towards his body. He took a step back. Interesting. It seems that you don't just have the bloodline of the hellhound. After Lin Yuan finished his sentence, he kept moving in the field, and the three dog heads chased after him for a while and hit him fiercely. Lin Yuan's movements were swift. The dog heads were fast. Almost in an instant, they had already overlapped each other. At this moment, Lin Yuan suddenly stopped in his tracks. Although you guys seem to be more powerful, the only thing you guys lack is that you guys don't have any intelligence. His words made Little Iron Egg, who was beside him, blush with shame. Little Iron Egg didn't even know what intelligence was. At this moment, one could clearly see that the three dog heads were entangled together. There was no sign of them being able to break free. He even clapped his hands and cheered, as expected of Master. He can deal with such monsters with just a little trick. Lin Yuan didn't say anything. He knew that it would be easy to deal with these guys so easily. Moreover, he knew that this guy must have other powers that he hadn't used yet. As expected. Right at this moment, the three dog heads suddenly began to spray flames all over the sky and earth. Then, their bodies were covered with countless flames. Under the burning of the flames, their bodies began to grow bigger. Then, they gradually split into three aggressive dogs. Lin Yuan could clearly see that the other party's fangs had stretched out, and there was a special smell coming from the mouths of the three dog heads. Lin Yuan chuckled. Then, he turned around and rushed toward one of the dog heads. You still want to struggle? I told you, if you anger me, I will blow your dog heads off. After saying that, he clenched his fist. Then, with a bang, he punched one of the dog heads. Although it didn't explode, it made the dog involuntarily take a few steps back. He didn't know what his opponent's bottom line was. Just this one punch was enough to make him lose his ability to fight. The other two dogs also involuntarily took a step back. Lin Yuan sneered. It's too late to be afraid now. Just as he said that, a burst of laughter came from the second level of the tower. I didn't expect to welcome someone of this level here. I apologize for not going out to welcome him. Then, a man dressed in white slowly walked down from the second level of the tower. His expression was calm. His white clothes were whiter than snow. He looked ethereal. He was like an immortal who walked out of a painting. Chapter 1243. Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows slightly. As the saying went, one had to look at the owner before beating a dog. Under such circumstances, Lin Yuan naturally could not continue to smash the dog's head. He looked at the person in front of him and smiled. I didn't expect to see such a handsome person here. It's really rare. The white-clothed person did not say anything. Instead, he smiled and waved his hand, causing a table and chair to appear in front of him. Looking at the table and chair that appeared in front of him, Lin Yuan did not stand on ceremony and directly sat down. Meanwhile, Tai Dan stood behind him. The white-clothed person really had the aura of a celestial. With a wave of his hand, a steaming hot tea was placed in front of Lin Yuan. However, at this moment, Tai Dan whispered into his ear, Master, he should be a celestial. His aura is extraordinary. He has always been the one guarding this tower. Lin Yuan softly acknowledged. Looking at the white-clothed person in front of him, he said calmly, I didn't expect that there would be someone with such an extraordinary aura among you demons. However, my disciple has been deceived by your appearance. Why don't you reveal your true form and let me take a look? The white-clothed person's expression was originally calm. However, after hearing what he said, his expression suddenly changed. He snorted coldly, What do you mean by me treating you with respect? Lin Yuan had a smile on his face. However, the corners of his eyes and the tips of his eyebrows were lowered. In the end, he directly said, Of course, what I mean is, since you're treating me with respect, why did you trap us in this tower for no reason? Do you think that I can't tell that you're using such a method? After Lin Yuan finished speaking, the white-clothed person's expression changed slightly. Naturally, he could tell. At this moment, his method had been seen through. His expression was somewhat unsightly. I didn't think that my touch would fail to satisfy your eyes. However, so what? Do you know that this pagoda of mine is a treasure that is hard to come by? Almost none of those trapped here have been able to escape. Not to mention humans, even Yao Kings can do nothing about it. They can only obediently follow my orders. After he finished speaking, Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows. Based on what you're saying, it seems that you were the one who sent out the demon kings in the city. When he spoke, he was no longer as indifferent as before. His voice had turned cold. Hearing this, the man in white laughed maniacally. So what if it's my roommate? It's precisely because of this that I can guard this area. Otherwise, how do you think I can manage these demon kings here? If it weren't for my methods, the human cities would have been destroyed long ago. After he finished speaking, he picked up the teacup in his hand and took a sip. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan chuckled, All right, since that's the case, I'll make it so that no other demon king can order me around. After he finished speaking, he slammed the table fiercely, causing the table to shatter into pieces. The man in white immediately retreated. Then, a string of bells appeared in his hand. He threw the bells out. The bell grew in size out of thin air and directly covered Lin Yuan. When Bruiser saw this, he began to hit the bell like a madman. However, the man in white laughed loudly. This demon-binding spirit isn't something you can break. No matter who it is, as long as they enter, they will turn into pus and blood in a short moment. Lin Yuan was trapped inside, but he could hear what the man outside was saying. He reached out his hand and gently knocked on the bell. A series of crisp sounds rang out. At this moment, he snorted coldly. "You're still lacking if you want to deal with me with such a thing." After he finished speaking, Lin Yuan took a step forward. He directly punched the bells at the side. In the blink of an eye, a crack appeared in the leader's heart. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan snorted, "I didn't expect this thing to be so sturdy." However, after he finished speaking, he clenched his fist and punched the bells again. Then, everything seemed to have gone wrong. At this moment, the man in white walked over step by step. Rays of light appeared in his hand and enveloped Lin Yuan. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan just smiled lightly, and then directly grabbed the hand of the man in white with one hand. Then, he shook violently. Wan Yi's white robes immediately retreated at this moment, revealing the smooth fur on his body. Lin Yuan smiled, "Little iron egg, look carefully. What exactly is this thing?" After saying this, he clenched his hand. This person, who was originally dressed in white, directly fell to the ground. How was this a person? This was simply a snow-white tiger with a multicolored body. The guy cried bitterly on the ground, then stood up immediately. "Oh, I'm going to eat you, you reckless human." However, as soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yuan snorted coldly. "It seems that smashing a dog's head isn't enough. Let's smash a tiger's head." After he finished speaking, he stretched out his fist again and smashed it hard on the tiger's head. At this moment, everything seemed to have stopped. Little Iron Egg, who was watching from the side, was in a daze. What's going on? How did he turn into a tiger? Lin Yuan smiled. This was a multicolored great demon king. However, its realm was much higher than the other demons. Otherwise, it would not be able to control those guys out of thin air. Seeing such a scene, Lin Yuan dragged this guy to the front of Little Iron Egg. "Since you can control these drugs, you can be my disciple's guard." "That's not bad." After hearing Lin Yuan's words, Little Iron Egg was stunned. He wanted to refuse at first, but he immediately sensed the tiger's special aura. He walked over quietly and opened the tiger's mouth. "Master, I really like this tiger. It's just that his teeth look a little scary. Otherwise, would have pulled his teeth out." After he finished speaking, the multicolored tiger, who originally wanted to refuse to give in, immediately retreated at this moment. Don't do this. Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't have the strength of a demon king." After saying this, it turned back into its human form and knelt down in front of Little Iron Egg. Chapter 1244. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly. He hadn't expected the tiger to speak in such a manner. This was a dignified demon king. Since that was the case, he obediently laid down beside Little Iron Egg. Lin Yuan smiled and said, "There seems to be something else hidden in this pagoda." Just as he finished speaking, the obedient half-Mongolian turned into a kitten. "There are monster kings here who are much stronger than me. If you really dare to go in, I'm afraid you will be doomed." The multicolored tiger clearly didn't want them to infiltrate further at this moment. Lin Yuan was a little surprised by its behavior. "It seems like you don't want us to go in," Lin Yuan said calmly. Indeed, when he finished speaking, the ferocious tiger was indeed as obedient as a kitten as it lay on the ground. "I really don't want to harm you. Since I've become one of your people, I naturally won't let you go into the fire pit under such circumstances. The people here are much stronger than me." It seemed to be explaining anxiously. Even Bruiser, who was standing at the side, believed him. "Master, if that's the case, why don't we not go in first? After all, we have gained some benefits from this trip." However, just as he finished speaking, Lin Yuan shook his head. "There must be a demon behind this abnormality. It seems like you still don't understand." After he finished speaking, he took a step forward. Then, with a light tap of his hand, the tiger disappeared into Iron Egg's body. At this moment, he no longer wanted to think about anything else. In his opinion, for such a barren city to have so many monsters, there must be something special here. When he thought of this, he took a step forward. This place was too strange. The fact that so many monsters were hiding here meant that this place was definitely not ordinary. Therefore, at this time, Lin Yuan decided to step in directly to see what was going on. However, before he could finish his sentence, Tai Dan hesitated for a long time. At that moment, the tiger hidden in his body seemed to have a problem. Tai Dan's body began to slowly become thicker. His forelimbs also became abnormally strong. He didn't look like he did before. Lin Yuan quietly looked at such a scene. He knew that there must be something unusual about the state that appeared at this time. However, he understood that this problem wasn't a bad thing. The tiger wanted to take over Iron Egg's body, so it was trying its best to fuse with Iron Egg's body. If Lin Yuan didn't do anything, Iron Egg's life would be in danger. Furthermore, this danger wouldn't be so simple. However, right at this moment, Iron Egg's eyes suddenly turned red from eating. "I'm going to kill you, you bastard. You destroyed my cultivation and destroyed my foundation." Although these words came out of Iron Egg's mouth, Lin Yuan knew that they weren't coming out of Iron Egg's mouth. Lin Yuan squinted as the seven-colored light in his hand revolved around his eyes. "So you think that you can deal with me by controlling his body?" Lin Yuan was as calm as ever. Seeing this change, Tai Gan's expression suddenly froze. "Even if I can't deal with you, I'll still get what I want by killing this kid." After saying this, Iron Egg's body started to grow involuntarily like a seedling that had been fattened up. Lin Yuan shook his head faintly. His original intention was to let this guy assist Bruiser and help him become a god. However, he didn't expect that at this moment, everything seemed to have gone wrong. This guy was actually rebelling. Lin Yuan flicked his finger gently. At this moment, a wave of seven-colored light shot out from his hand and directly entered Tai Tai's body. However, the muscles on his body started to grow involuntarily, as if they were being controlled by something. Then, they slowly grew to the size of a small mountain. "I know that the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth won't be able to deal with you. However, don't think that I'm just like that useless wolf king who only knows how to use heaven and earth." As soon as he finished speaking, he came out of the cave. His head smashed viciously against Lin Yuan's body. "No matter who you are, you already have misgivings in your heart. Therefore, you are simply no match for me. Give up. This is your destiny." Lin Yuan hadn't wanted to say anything at first. However, when he saw Iron Egg's attacks on his body, he couldn't help but say something. "Are you tickling me? Why aren't you doing anything?" Iron Egg's face fell when he heard this. He hadn't expected that his attacks would be so insignificant to Luo Yunyang. Luo Yunyang didn't even frown. "What kind of behavior is this? How can you be so valiant? Even my attacks can't break through your defense." At this moment, the tiger knew that even though it had borrowed the body of this mortal, its cultivation base was still there. His initial attacks had only been to probe the opponent. However, every move he used now was a killing move. He didn't hold back at all. Even so, he couldn't cause any harm to Luo Yunyang. Luo Yunyang had even started to yawn. "My disciple's body has been occupied by you, yet you can only use this much power. It seems like you aren't qualified to be his guard." After saying this, he swung his hand fiercely, sending Iron Egg's body crashing against the wall. Lin Yuan didn't stop attacking. He knew that even if he attacked Iron Egg now, the damage would still land on Iron Egg's body. Ever since Iron Egg had started to rebel, Luo Yunyang had already made up his mind to kill him. After all, no one wanted to keep such a scourge by their side. When he thought of this, Lin Yuan's movements started to become more violent. Finally, at this moment, Lin Yuan grabbed Tai Danner's neck. "Seems like you are no longer of any use. Get out here." Chapter 1245. Lin Yuan's movements were clean and nimble, like moving clouds and flowing water. After he finished this action, the tiger that had been hiding in Tai Tai's body finally appeared again. Lin Yuan fiercely punched the other party's skull. Dong! There was a muffled sound, but there was no reaction. Bruiser finally recovered, but his movements were still a little stiff. He didn't seem to have noticed what had happened. He stared blankly at the tiger's corpse on the ground, lost in thought. Master, what's going on? Bruiser's bewilderment made Lin Yuan chuckle. This guy wanted to control you to deal with me, so I killed him. As for your reincarnation, let's find another monster to replace you for now. His words were said very lightly, as if he was talking about casually changing into a new set of clothes. However, Bruiser didn't know what was going on with the alcohol. He only felt his body suddenly become clear, as if something had been removed from his body. Looking at the scene in front of him, he didn't hesitate too much. He just nodded gently and said, "Then what should we do next?" Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes. "Next, we'll take another step forward. We'll go to the next floor and see what's going on." After he finished speaking, he pulled the bewildered iron forward. He naturally knew that they would encounter more problems in this situation. Moreover, there seemed to be a huge monster hiding in the Black Tower. However, he didn't care about these things. To him, with his strength and the existence of the system, he had nothing to fear. At this moment, he was already thinking of ways to subdue some monster kings. He knew that in this place, in the territory of the god-worship sect, it wasn't strange at all. Moreover, it was very likely that the god-worship sect had set up some kind of trap. At this moment, they must have made up their mind to pave the way for this. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many monster kings gathered here. When he thought of this, he walked up to the next floor step by step. Bruiser, on the other hand, felt uneasy. This was because he didn't know what he was going to face next. He instinctively felt that something must have happened when he fell asleep, but he didn't know what it was. Just as he was pondering, he had been pulled directly to the next floor by Lin Yuan. On this floor, as soon as they came in, it was full of fog. There didn't seem to be anything else here, and he couldn't see anything else clearly. It was just shrouded in fog. Lin Yuan's expression was a little hesitant. Of course, he couldn't tell what these things were. However, he instinctively felt that there was something wrong with the things that appeared in front of him at this moment. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and looked at the fog in front of him. He instinctively felt that the mist seemed to be absorbing the power in his body, but he wasn't sure, or rather, he couldn't find out what was absorbing his power. Lin Yuan frowned. He didn't expect that there would be such a thing hidden here, and he couldn't find its whereabouts at all. Interesting. I didn't expect the Church of Gods to be so capable. I didn't expect to find such a monster here. After he finished speaking, he turned in another direction because he could clearly see that in the fog, there was a strong silhouette approaching them step by step. Lin Yuan was a little puzzled. He didn't expect to see such a strong thing here, and it didn't look like a monster king. There wasn't even any fluctuation of monster chi on its body. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan smiled softly. He hadn't felt like this for a long time. He seemed to have met his long-awaited prey. Don't let me find you if you hide here. If I find you, it won't be as simple as being killed by me. After he finished speaking, he threw out a colorful light from his hand. At this moment, the huge figure had also revealed itself in the fog. It was a towering tree. However, there was already a human face on his tree trunk. When he saw this scene, Bruiser was clearly shocked. However, he immediately glanced at Lin Yuan, who was next to him, and calmed down. "Master, what exactly is this thing?" Tai Dan asked blankly. Lin Yuan nodded gently. "This thing is a tree demon. However, its intelligence has been taken away by someone. Now, all that's left is this body for someone to control. However, this is quite a big deal. They actually used 1,000-year-old Yao King's soul essence." After he finished speaking, he stretched out his hand and gently patted it. A flame immediately appeared in his hand. Then, he directly swallowed the tree demon. The flame burned. The sound of a peeper rang out. It was as if it wasn't a tree that was burning, but steel. Lin Yuan closed his eyes and looked at the scene in front of him. The burning flame just now didn't weaken the surrounding fog. In fact, the surrounding fog became thicker. He knew that this was definitely not an ordinary matter. There must be something controlling everything in the dark. However, he was now the target and prey. From now on, follow me closely. Don't leave me by even half an inch. If you leave my range, you might encounter something. If you can't protect your life, I won't care. Lin Yuan said softly. At this moment, Tai Dan didn't feel that his words were worth much. He clearly knew that if he wanted to stay by his master's side, he had to have the corresponding strength. What he had obtained was more than enough. At least compared to before, he had not only taken his revenge, but also had a cultivation base now. If nothing unexpected happened, his master would give him a special identity and turn these things into his guards. With such generous conditions, how could he possibly complain? Now, he only hated that he wasn't strong enough to match his master's strength. However, even though he sighed, he still followed Lin Yuan's footsteps closely. He knew that in this special place, if he was careless, he might not have a chance to live. Chapter 1246. It was also at this moment that countless vines began to reach out from the surroundings and entangle them. The vines came so suddenly that they were caught off guard. Lin Yuan's figure moved slightly and he dodged the other party's attack. The sudden attack in the fog didn't seem to make him flustered. It even made him feel a little amused. At this time, this guy actually wanted to use such a method to deal with him. This was simply a fool's dream. However, before he could react, he clearly saw that there were rays of light wrapped around his wrist. Wrapped in the rays of light were human heads. Lin Yuan frowned. He didn't expect that there would be such an existence in this place. It seemed that this guy was a scourge. When many people thought of this, his movements became even more violent. He began to tear the vines apart. His movements were extremely violent. It even made people feel that he had a grudge against these vines. However, what no one expected was that as he tore them apart, the vines actually divided into two. Two divided into four. It was as if they could reproduce endlessly. Seeing this change, Bruiser already had thoughts of retreating. After all, he was only a child. After seeing the means of so many monster kings, he didn't know if he could continue to persevere and walk with his master. At this moment, Lin Yuan suddenly moved. He directly opened his mouth and a majestic flame flew out from his mouth. At this moment, Bruiser was almost stunned. He didn't expect that his master would be able to use such a powerful attack at this moment. The temperature of the flame was so hot that he had no choice but to dodge. Even if he had the power given to him by his master, he still had to dodge the flame because he felt that if he didn't dodge, it was very likely that he would be directly swallowed by the flame. He died on the spot. Lin Yuan's mouth was like a flamethrower. He kept spewing flames around him. As the flames evaporated, the seemingly dense fog began to weaken. Lin Yuan had been using his eyes to observe the surroundings. He was looking for the instigator here. He was looking for the person who released these weapons. After all, the 1,000-year-old Jing Ku, who could control and seize the Monster King, wasn't someone who could be easily dealt with. When he thought of this, his mind began to move fiercely again. In his opinion, everything was already set in stone. At this moment, no matter what methods these guys used, they couldn't do anything to the other party. And he was also happy to play such a game. Since the other party wanted to fight as the hunter and the prey, he could only reluctantly choose this way of fighting. Now, he wanted to force the other party to show himself. Everything would be easy if the other party showed himself. When he thought of this, the speed at which Lin Yuan spewed flames became a little faster. It didn't take long for a cyclone to form in the fog. The cyclone didn't stop. At this moment, everything began to change. Slowly, the mist began to burn. At this moment, Lin Yuan finally stopped the movement of his mouth. Naturally, he didn't just want to retreat. When he spewed flames, he seeped his power into the fog. He wanted to use this method to completely dissolve the other party's attack. Not only that, he also considered another situation, which was to force the other party to show himself. Since the other party wasn't willing to show himself, he had to force the other party to show himself. Only then could he find the other party's key. Sure enough, when the fog disappeared, Lin Yuan found that caves appeared one after another on the ground. In this cabin tower, the world seemed to be a separate space and a small world. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and looked at the caves on the ground. He knew that the instigator must be underground. He could even clearly see the smoke emitted from the caves. All the smoke came from here. Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He snorted coldly and then casually pointed at Lin Yuan. A flame spewed out from his hand and directly fell into the cave. It felt like he was catching a cunning rabbit. Lin Yuan didn't hesitate. He wanted to find the other party at this critical moment. But what he didn't expect was that just as his movements changed a little, a bald head would suddenly pop out of nowhere. It was a rabbit without any hair on its head. Lin Yuan reached out to grab the rabbit's ears. But before his hand landed, the rabbit had already returned to the cave. At this moment, Little White, who was on his wrist, actually hissed and spat out apricots. "Do you want to deal with this guy?" Lin Yuan lowered his head and looked at the guy on his wrist. He didn't expect Little White to take the initiative at this moment. I immediately reached out my hand. Sure enough, Little White twisted its body and began to move into the cave. The moment it left Lin Yuan's arm, its body began to expand. With a bite, the snake's body was as thick as a bucket. It directly drilled into the cave. At this moment, Bruiser was dumbfounded. It was as if he didn't know what was going on. He pointed at the white snake and asked, "Master, is that a dragon in your hand?" But just as he finished his sentence, Lin Yuan shook his head. "It's just a random pet. There's no need to make a fuss." After he finished speaking, he turned his head around. He stood quietly at the entrance of the cave. He knew that since Little White wanted to take the initiative to deal with the rabbit, it meant that this fellow definitely had a way to solve the current problem. When he thought of this, Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and waited at the entrance of the cave. He knew that no matter what, the rabbit couldn't escape. But at this moment, a burst of smoke suddenly ignited in the cave. It was as if something had exploded, causing the entire underground cave to tremble. Then, Whitey crawled out of the cave, its body completely black. However, it wasn't without results, because the child was holding the bald rabbit in his mouth. Chapter 1247. However, it wasn't without results, because the child was holding the bald rabbit in its mouth. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan just smiled gently. "I didn't expect you to have a way." He didn't expect Little White to be able to catch this slippery guy like a loach in this place. Because even he had to spend some effort to find the rabbit, but Little White seemed to have a natural restraining effect, and the rabbit couldn't escape at all. Lin Yuan's words caused Little White to be dissatisfied. She twisted her body and shook off the black stains on her body. At this moment, the rabbit was already obediently lying on the ground. Although it looked like a human, it still maintained the most primitive state of 4 limbs on the ground. Did you just use those tricks to kill us with the poison bow?" Lin Yuan saw through the rabbit's flaw with one sentence, because he already clearly saw that the rabbit had more than one kind of poison in the fog. When he said this, he directly asked this question, but after he said this sentence, the rabbit actually shook its head. In fact, Lin Yuan also felt a little surprised, because in his opinion, the rabbit in front of him was fine, and was even very weak, not even reaching the Demon King realm. While seeing this change, he was also a little puzzled. The tiger on the previous level was already very powerful, but this rabbit was actually 1 level above the tiger, so it should be much stronger than the tiger. However, he didn't know why the rabbit was so weak. Lin Yuan frowned. "You bald head, why are you 1 level higher than the tiger?" After he said this sentence, the rabbit actually turned its head to the side. It was as if it didn't want to look at him at all. Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He naturally could see that the rabbit was a little stubborn at this moment. Lin Yuan walked straight over, then grabbed the fur on the rabbit's body, and then gave it a hard slap. "If you don't speak, I'll pluck all the fur off your body." After he said this, the rabbit was indeed a little evasive, but it still stubbornly didn't want to do anything. Seeing this, Lin Yuan smiled faintly. "Little Iron Egg, have you eaten roasted rabbit meat before?" After he said this, Little Iron Egg was a little excited. He directly took a step forward. "I love eating this thing the most, and I have a lot of experience in dealing with it. If Master is willing, I can help you deal with it right away." He said this without the slightest hesitation. It was as if he was very interested in everything. He seemed to be unable to restrain himself, and directly rushed over. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan's smile. He could see that the bald rabbit was a little evasive at this moment. Even so, it wasn't afraid. It was at this moment that Lin Yuan's expression suddenly changed, because he found that this guy actually seemed to want to escape. But at this moment, Little Iron Egg to grab the rabbit's ear. The rabbit was as tall as a person, while Little Iron Egg was only half his height. However, he wasn't afraid at all. He directly sat on the rabbit's back and grabbed the rabbit's ear tightly. "Stop right there!" Little Bruiser shouted loudly. Just as he finished shouting, the fellow next to him, who was the rabbit, who hadn't dared to make a move all this while, finally opened his mouth. "What exactly do you want? Why do you have to make things difficult for me? I'm nothing more than a servant of someone else." After he said this, he had a bitter look on his face. Lin Yuan smiled faintly. "Then who was the one who enslaved you?" He wanted to know what else was hidden in this place, because he felt that everything had changed when he stepped on this floor. This place seemed to be a special world with a bottomless abyss. When he saw this scene, Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He could clearly feel the vastness of this world, but the rabbit's appearance was too abrupt. "You can't do anything even if I tell you. Although you can deal with me, you can't deal with the thing behind me." When he said this, there was a trace of fear on his face. When Lin Yuan saw this, he shook his head gently. "No matter what, you have to tell me who's behind you. Otherwise, I don't care if I can eat more roasted rabbit meat today." After he said this, the rabbit finally lowered its head. "You forced me to do this. I didn't want to do this at first, but you forced me to tell you who's behind this and who's involved in this matter. I had no choice but to do this." By the time he finished speaking, pustules had already started to appear on his body one after another. Lin Yuan frowned. This guy was clearly feeding himself to the poison. Now, he wanted to use his own power to release all the poison. This way, he would be able to force Lin Yuan and the others to retreat. When Little Iron Egg saw this, he naturally didn't dare to sit on the rabbit's back. He directly jumped back. At this moment, Lin Yuan suddenly blew out a breath of air. This breath of air was like a big mass of air, surrounding the rabbit. "I originally wanted to eat roasted rabbit meat, but it seems like you're not very obedient. Why don't I just turn you into a roasted rabbit?" After he said this, the ball of air dragged the rabbit and jumped into the air. The rabbit originally wanted to release all the poison on its body, but at this moment, it didn't have any leeway to resist. Lin Yuan didn't know how many monster kings he had dealt with, let alone this little guy who wasn't even a monster king. His movements started to become a lot more ferocious. At this moment, a ball of fire appeared on his hand and directly flew towards the ball of air. When this happened, pustules kept appearing on the rabbit's body. However, it suddenly opened its mouth and spat out a mouthful of purple-red smoke. The smoke seemed to have an extremely strong corrosive effect. It could corrode the ball of air. Lin Yuan snorted coldly. "You still want to use such a method of concealment at a time like this? You still want to use such a method to escape?" After he said this, the flames inside directly surrounded the ball of air. Waves of foul smell came from the ball of air. Chapter 1248. Lin Yuan could naturally tell that this fellow wanted to self-detonate first and then use the origin spirit to escape. How could he give this fellow this opportunity? As soon as he thought of this, he reached out his hand. Because in his opinion, it was almost impossible to directly operate such a simple method. It was the bald rabbit. It obviously didn't think that way. He snorted coldly. Don't think that you can catch me just because your cultivation level is high. Even if, the rabbit originally wanted to shout, but he didn't expect that as soon as he opened his mouth, a wave of energy would instantly entangle him. He didn't even finish his sentence. He stood there in a daze. At that moment, a bell had appeared in Lin Yuan's hand. At that moment, a ray of golden light finally entangled him. When he saw this scene, he didn't react at all. The rabbit stood on the spot in a daze. It was as if he didn't know how to express his feelings. He didn't even know what was going on. When he saw this change, Bruiser was also stunned. Master, what's going on? As soon as he asked this, Lin Yuan chuckled softly. Don't think that these fellows are so easy to get to know. They will use all sorts of methods to deal with us, so we should be more cautious at all times. After saying this, he didn't hesitate at all and reached out to grab the rabbit in front of him. When he saw this scene, the rabbit didn't react at all. He directly grabbed Lin Yuan with his back in his hand, or rather, he held his origin spirit in his hand. Lin Yuan smiled faintly. I don't know if you've heard of the soul-searching hand. The moment he finished speaking, the rabbit's expression changed drastically. The rabbit even started to kick his legs in confusion, as if he didn't know how to deal with what was going to happen next. When he saw this change, Lin Yuan shook his head gently. Tell me who's behind this and I'll let you live. Otherwise, I'll destroy your body and soul right here. He wasn't lying. If these fellows were really unwilling to tell him who was behind this, then he could really destroy their bodies and souls. Furthermore, he hadn't found the purpose of this deal yet, so he had already lost his patience. At that moment, the rabbit finally sighed and said, All right, I'll tell you, but you have to be sure that you can't do anything to me. After saying this, Lin Yuan recalled the bell in his hand. At this moment, with his action, the light emitted by the bell began to converge. The rabbit couldn't take it anymore. All right, I'm afraid of you. I can tell you the whole story, but, originally, he wanted to talk about conditions, but when he thought of Lin Yuan's actions just now, he shut his mouth and didn't make any more sound. In fact, every floor of this pagoda is sealed with the body of a devil god. None of us can suppress this devil god. That's why this pagoda appeared. This pagoda is also the foundation of god worship sect. They sealed this thing and didn't want it to come out. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes. Since the people of the god worship sect didn't want this devil god to come out, it meant that they either had no way to completely eliminate this devil god, or they wanted to use this devil god for other purposes. When Lin Yuan thought of this, he sighed faintly. Previously, he felt that something was wrong on the first floor, but he wasn't sure what was inside. Now that he heard the rabbit say this, he naturally knew that the thing inside was definitely not as simple as he thought. When he thought of this, he nodded gently. So, each floor seals a part of this devil god's body. As long as they are combined, they will be resurrected. Is this devil god right? Whether it was among these methods or other aspects, his conjecture should be the most appropriate. At this moment, after he finished speaking, the rabbit at the side finally nodded its head. In order to control this guy, our demigod sect invested a lot of effort. Although we can't see anything special at this time, this is still an elite of our god worship sect. Lin Yuan nodded gently, then waved at the rabbit. The golden light began to dissipate. Lin Yuan didn't want to use other means to deal with this guy. Since he already knew what he wanted to know, he naturally couldn't go back on his words. However, the rabbit didn't want to end this matter so easily. Just before it left, the rabbit suddenly threw one purple smoke ball after another behind it. When he saw this scene, Lin Yuan showed a hint of anger. It seems that you really don't know what's good for you. Since I've already let you go, you actually didn't think of escaping. Instead, you wanted to attack us." After he said this, the golden bell suddenly expanded and shone directly on the bald man's body. Then, it slowly shrank. It was as if the rabbit could not withstand the pressure of the golden bell at all. He was about to explode. When he saw this change, Tai Dan, who was next to him, was shocked. He had never seen such a bloody scene. At this moment, he even thought of some other ways to deal with this matter. However, at this moment, Lin Yuan snorted coldly. It was also at this moment that the fog in front of them slowly dissipated, reflecting a sea of flowers. Lin Yuan's expression slightly wrinkled, and at this time, the small white snake on his wrist also stood upright at this moment. It was as if he had discovered a crucial problem, or sensed some danger. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly. What's going on? It seems that the secret here isn't just on the rabbit. He immediately shook his head gently. It seems that this place is really interesting. Since it's a sealed demon god, let me see what kind of demon god is sealed here. After he finished speaking, he took a step forward. He directly crossed the boundary of the boat of the painted sea. At this moment, Tai Dan followed without any hesitation. Chapter 1249. Lin Yuan noticed the abnormality as soon as he stepped in. At this time, Tai Danner did not hesitate at all. After following Lin Yuan, he also felt that the surrounding situation was not quite right. "Master, this seems to be a special formation." After Tai Danner finished speaking, Lin Yuan nodded gently. "This is indeed a formation. Moreover, it's a formation that is extremely complicated." He was not joking because at this moment, he could see the difference in the array in front of him. It was as if a sea of confusion flowers had appeared in front of them. There were dangers hidden in the sea of flowers that they didn't know about. Even the path wasn't easy to see. Lin Yuan didn't want to say anything more at this moment, but at this moment, Lin Yuan found that the figure of Tai Gang next to him shook fiercely, and then the whole person disappeared in front of him. Lin Yuan was surprised. He didn't expect something like this to happen. However, after careful inspection, he found that there was nothing wrong with this kid. He just fell into a hole. The hole wasn't deep, but there were 5 colored crystals in it. Tai Tai held the crystal stones in surprise, and then said to Lin Yuan, who was outside the pit, "Master, what are these things? Why do they look so beautiful?" Lin Yuan did not speak because he could not recognize what it was. At this moment, the stones turned into a mass of gas and disappeared directly in front of the two of them. When he saw this scene, Lin Yuan was indeed slightly taken aback, not knowing what was going on. At this moment, Lin Yuan finally saw the crux of the problem. The thing that appeared in front of him wasn't anything else. It was a heavenly martial Azura. This was a kind of war god in the Tianwu world. They were extremely powerful. Almost no one could rival them. They were even stronger than the demon kings. However, he didn't know why these celestial dance shuras would appear here. Under normal circumstances, not only would they not appear here, but such a poetic place shouldn't have such murderous intent lurking in it. But just as he was wondering, Lin Yuan found that these heavenly martial Azuras had been resurrected. They had swords and sabers in their hands. They slashed at the two of them. Lin Yuan gently raised his eyebrows. Now that Tai Dan had rushed out, he directly blocked the attack of the Tianwu Azura in front of him. Seeing such a scene, Lin Yuan did not say much. Instead, he looked at him quietly. He knew that the strength of this heavenly dance Azura was tyrannical, but he also understood that Iron Chain was not as weak as before. Tai Dan's strength was almost on par with the Demon King's. He had already digested a portion of the energy he gave Tai Dan. But at this moment, Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes. He had been carefully observing the battle. He knew that if anything happened to Tai Dan, he would have to lend a helping hand. However, before he could do anything, Tai Dan's chest seemed to be burning. He charged at the heavenly martial Azura without any regard for his life. Under this continuous attack, there was almost no hesitation. Each attack was stronger than the previous one. When Lin Yuan saw this scene, he couldn't help but be stunned by his appearance. In his opinion, everything was given to Little Iron Egg by him. If Little Iron Egg didn't use his energy to improve himself and didn't have the courage to face his enemies, then even if he gave him energy, he wouldn't be able to become stronger. Lin Yuan realized that not only was Tai Dan's talent outstanding, but his courage was also extraordinary. That was why he knew that at this moment, no matter what methods he used, or rather, whatever methods he had, he could leave them to him without setting up any defenses. The battle between Tai Dan and the heavenly martial Azura had already reached its climax. The heavenly martial Azura's entire body was steaming with blood. Tai Dan looked like an evil spirit from hell. Tai Dan stood where he was. His body was drenched in sweat. The two of them seemed to be standing on opposite sides of life and death. It was as if they were mortal enemies. The heavenly martial Azura charged again and again. Little Tai Dan blocked again and again. His small body carried an inconceivable amount of power as he charged at his opponent. Tai Dan didn't hesitate at all. His other methods started to become stronger and stronger. It was obvious that the heavenly martial Azura hadn't expected his attacks to be so powerful. Finally, Little Iron Egg let out a wild roar. His body began to emit waves of blood chi. The heavenly martial Azura was stunned. He opened his mouth and said in disbelief, "How could he be a natural-born Azura? This kid is actually a natural-born Azura." Before he could finish speaking, Lin Yuan frowned. He had overlooked this point. He hadn't expected that a random little boy would be able to secure such a huge guarantee in the borderlands. If Tai Dan was really a natural-born Azura, then his strength couldn't be measured by normal standards. However, it could also be that Tai Dan's cultivation method had taken effect. Otherwise, how could Tai Dan explode with such powerful combat strength? Tai Dan had to wait until he saw the results. After all, it was too early to draw conclusions. Lin Yuan had already grabbed a small stone in front of him with one hand. He didn't want anyone to disturb the battle between Tai Dan and the fifth Azura. From the looks of it, Tai Dan's combat strength was extremely strong. It was time for him to increase his strength. If he was disturbed by others, it would ruin things. When he thought of this, Lin Yuan's movements became a little gentler, and he was now staring closely at a few Azuras that appeared next to him. He knew that at this moment, if those Azuras really wanted to use some other method to win with numbers, he would definitely not hesitate to take action. Perhaps it was at this moment that a special pattern began to appear on the iron rod's body. These patterns seemed to have a special mark on them. The moment they appeared, they brought with them a majestic blood chi to attack Tai Dan's body. Then, Tai Dan shouted. Chapter 1250. Little Iron Tower's movements started to become dazzling. His movements became faster and faster, and each move seemed to be a killing move. Everything about him seemed to be a memory engraved in his bones. His air attacks became more and more powerful. Even the Tianwu Azura couldn't resist. Finally, on that day, Azura, was defeated. His blade had already shattered. Little Iron Egg, on the other hand, only relied on his fists. He had actually defeated the other party with brute force. When Lin Yuan saw this scene, he gently nodded his hand. "Well, go to the side and rest for a while. Leave the rest of these guys to me." As soon as he finished speaking, the Tianwu Azuras beside him pulled out their blades. When the defeated Tianwu Azura saw this, he sighed softly and turned to the Azuras behind him. "We've met a true Tianwu Azura. No matter how strong we are, we can't deal with him." When he finished speaking, he knelt down in front of Little Iron Egg. "Tianwu Azura, I look forward to the Azura King leading us back to the glory of the Azura race." When he finished speaking, he lowered his proud head. Lin Yuan didn't know how to react. Shouldn't someone of my status be unruly and unrestrained? Why did these guys submit so easily? He hadn't expected this. Little Iron Egg was even more embarrassed. He narrowed his eyes and turned to look at Lin Yuan. "Master, I want them to be my guards. I don't want those monster kings. When he finished speaking, he knelt down in front of Lin Yuan without any hesitation. When he saw this, Lin Yuan already had a plan. Since this kid had such talent, he would create an Azura city for him in this place. At the very least, he would be able to display his strength. No matter what, he would be able to balance this place. At the very least, this place would no longer belong to the god-worship church. When he thought of this, he prepared to make a move. However, at that moment, Little Iron Egg's face was filled with joy. He even reached out and touched the foreheads of the Azuras. Lin Yuan was puzzled. He didn't know what Little Iron Egg was doing. Master, I am using my own methods to make them sign a subservient contract. This way, the contract between us will be unbreakable. When Little Iron Egg said this, it was as if he had already understood the situation thoroughly. At this moment, there was even a hint of pride on his face. Looking at this scene, Lin Yuan nodded gently. He knew that there was no need to discuss this matter any further. Since this kid already had his own plans and had the ability to recruit them as his subordinates, it would save him a lot of effort. Well, in that case, tell me, where is the so-called demon god's body that is waiting here? In his opinion, it was a good thing that such a thing could be hidden in this place. Apart from the tower guardian he encountered on the first floor, which was the colorful tiger, Zhang Heng was not interested in this thing at all. There seemed to be nothing else related to the Demon King. Therefore, he thought that if there were any special problems here, he could ask about the road construction immediately. However, he didn't expect that these Azuras would all shake their heads. We don't know where the demon god's shell is. We're just some Azuras trapped here. If you want to understand what's going on here, you'll have to open up this sea of flowers. This sea of flowers is a formation. After saying this, these Azuras acted as if this matter had nothing to do with them. Lin Yuan was a little surprised. He didn't expect these Azuras to be so direct. They didn't even say anything when Little Iron Egg tried to interrogate them. It was as if they really didn't know anything about this place. Lin Yuan sighed softly. Forget it. In that case, I won't get any clues even if I interrogate you. I won't interrogate you anymore. Of course, he knew that at this moment, he couldn't get anything out of these guys. Therefore, he directly said this and left. He walked directly to the depths of the sea of flowers. Since he had to flip the entire sea of flowers to see the secret hidden here, he might as well do it directly. When he thought of this, he didn't hesitate and stomped his foot hard. With him as the center, a wave spread from his foot to the surroundings. It was like an arc of a circle. At this moment, the surrounding sea of flowers surged, and at the same time, he saw one fruit after another appearing below. However, these Azuras looked like children. Lin Yuan was a little puzzled. He didn't understand what was going on at all. He even felt that these things were a little strange. Why would there be children under this boundless sea of fire? On the other hand, the Azuras shook their heads gently. This god-worshipping cult is really unscrupulous. They actually used humans as nourishment for these seeds. After saying this, the Azuras began to pull out the flowers and plants on the ground. Lin Yuan waved his hand to stop them. Don't touch these flowers and plants first. I can use these flowers and plants to dig out the guy hiding here. After saying this, a rainbow-colored light lingered from his hand and fell directly on the flowers. Then, the flowers seemed to have a life of their own as they pointed in a direction. Lin Yuan shook his head gently. It seems that you've hidden your strength well. But even so, don't you think that you're admitting defeat by not showing yourself? The Azuras and Little Bruiser were stunned. They didn't react at all. What's going on? However, as soon as Lin Yuan finished speaking, a huge force surged out from his body. Then, a rusty armor appeared in front of Lin Yuan. It was an extremely simple armor, and the person wearing it was an old man who had been hammering for a long time. This old man seemed to be unable to even hold a sword. Chapter 1251. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and sized up the old man in front of him. However, he immediately frowned. Because he felt that this guy seemed to have undergone some other changes at this moment. The moment the Azuras next to him were about to rush up, Lin Yuan stopped them directly. Don't move. They are no match for him. If I really went up at noon, I might not have encountered any problems. Even I was a little surprised by his method of connecting the straps. Master, what exactly is this? Lin Yuan smiled faintly. I've encountered many interesting things here, but I didn't expect to encounter such an interesting thing. After he finished speaking, he squinted his eyes and walked forward. You must be that demon god's armor and weapon, said the demon god. He directly said to the old man, who looked like he was about to collapse. Little Iron Egg and the Azuras were stunned. They didn't expect the old man in front of them to be the demon god's armor and weapon. Lin Yuan had seen many strange things. It wasn't the first time he saw an armor and weapon with a weapon spirit. Moreover, he could feel that this old man wasn't as simple as he thought. He could even take over a human's body to provide him with energy. Moreover, he could feel that the old man was desperately absorbing the energy from the old man's body. When he thought of this, his actions changed. He knew that the old man in front of him was definitely not ordinary. Moreover, he could clearly feel that the old man's surging energy wasn't something that an ordinary person could deal with. However, he didn't hesitate. He just sighed softly. Since you're here, you can either submit to me or be killed by me. Lin Yuan's words weren't sloppy at all. After he finished speaking, the old man nodded his head slightly. He didn't make any sound as he flipped his hand and struck out with his sword. I haven't fought with my master for many years. This time, I'll take it as my last contribution to the director. If I'm lucky enough to defeat you, sir, then please release my master no matter what. After he finished speaking, Lin Yuan just nodded slightly. He had long been prepared for this. At this moment, he didn't want to make any mistakes. Therefore, without any hesitation, he slowly walked towards the broken armor and the old man wearing it. The Azuras had indeed noticed the old man's actions. That's right, the sword-drawing technique. One of the Shuras recognized the method used by the old man and was shocked. Of course, he knew that at this moment, no matter who it was, as long as they wanted to fight, they would have to use this method to fight the old man. The method that the old man was using at this moment was the strongest sword-drawing warrior that all warriors dreamed of. It wasn't just the Azuras. Even Tai Dan was captivated. What kind of idea is this? To think that it would have such an imposing manner right from the start. In fact, it even makes me feel somewhat cold all over. It's as though I've been drenched from head to toe by the sword chi. Little Tai Dan couldn't help but mutter to himself. Lin Yuan, on the other hand, looked indifferent. He took a step forward, completely ignoring the guys beside him. When he took a step forward, his aura rose. At this moment, the old man couldn't help but narrow his eyes. He knew that the opponent he was facing this time was definitely not simple. At the same time, he didn't know how many times he had fought this demon god and how many tyrannical opponents he had encountered. However, at this moment, he couldn't help but feel excited. He was indeed using weapons and armor. But at this moment, all of his strength had already enveloped the other party. He didn't use any other means, he was just using his aura to suppress the other party. At this moment, the old man still couldn't pull out his sword. In the eyes of the Azuras, this was the most tyrannical sword move, but they couldn't use it. Lin Yuan's strength was just that strong. He was simply approaching the old man step by step, but the old man couldn't pull out the sword in his hand. The reason he used the blade drawer on the sword was to be able to kill with one strike. However, he now realized that he had no control over the weapon in his hand at all. He even felt that this sure-kill move was completely useless. When he thought of this, he almost couldn't control his hands, which were trembling slightly. The armor started to creak. As Lin Yuan's footsteps got closer and closer, the creaking became louder and louder. When he saw this, Lin Yuan just smiled faintly. The old man finally pulled out the sword in his hand by an inch. The old man still wasn't confident. Although he was controlled by the weapon and armor, he was also an extremely powerful warrior when he was alive. He didn't expect to meet such a strong opponent at all. He knew that his realm was too far away from his opponents. He didn't even know what to do. At this point, Lin Yuan had already stretched out his hand. In the next moment, he was about to launch an attack. The old man sighed softly. He finally pulled out all his swords, but he didn't immediately attack the blade drawer. It had already been broken. Seeing this change, the so-called Asuras were all stunned. They didn't react at all. What was going on? But at this moment, Lin Yuan discovered a problem. No matter what, there was a faint light lingering on the old man's body. There should be more than just the weapon and armor of the demon god lying in ambush here. If that was the case, it wouldn't be enough for the weapon and armor to control a human, absorb his power, and control him. Lin Yuan suddenly stretched out his hand and pointed. Something seemed to explode on the old man's body. At this moment, everything that would happen in the future was revealed. Lin Yuan saw a crystal-clear heart floating in the center of the armor. All of this was because of this heart. This was the heart of the demon god. Lin Yuan smiled slightly. Just as he was about to reach out to grab it, he found that the armor and weapon in front of him were already surrounded by a layer of red light. Chapter 1252. Lin Yuan could clearly see the so-called demon god that appeared in front of him. To be more precise, it was a set of armor and a weapon driven by an unfamiliar heart. As for the person inside, he had already been absorbed by the unfamiliar heart. Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly when he saw the layers of red light blossoming. It seems that every part of this demon god has been trained to a special level, Lin Feng said. As soon as he finished speaking, a few strands of special light flashed. Seeing this scene, Tai Danner's expression tightened slightly. He wanted to step forward and block in front of Lin Yuan. He knew that the special light was the demon god's attack, so he didn't dare to let his guard down. Seeing this kind of phone call, Lin Yuan gently waved his hand to signal her not to come over. You don't have to come over. I'll take it myself. After he finished speaking, he didn't hesitate at all. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the weapons in front of him. Clang! A crisp sound rang out. Lin Yuan's hand finally grasped the long sword, and he directly held the weapon tightly. Although you used to be an unfamiliar part, you're not anymore. You're facing me. If you continue to persist in going about things the wrong way, I'll kill you without hesitation. Lin Yuan's words weren't unreasonable. He did have the strength to do so. However, he didn't want to do so because in his opinion, if he could subdue a complete deity warden, it would naturally be an extremely wonderful thing for him. However, he didn't expect this guy's reaction to be different from what he imagined. The guy in front of him seemed to have gone crazy at this moment. He directly bumped into him. At this moment, the armor seemed to have displayed an unparalleled power. Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. Naturally, he knew that at this moment, he needed to collect all of the demon god's organs in order to awaken the demon god. However, he was just curious about the demon god. If he wanted to be completely attracted to it, it would have to be at the level of the third demon king. He could sense that the demon god that appeared at this very moment should only be at the level of 2 monster kings. Therefore, he had already made a decision in his heart. He was considering whether he should directly take this demon god for his own use. As for Tai Dan, he already had his own guards, the Sky Marshal Asuras. They were absolutely loyal to Tai Dan, a natural Asura. Therefore, they could not abandon this body. After Lin Yuan finished speaking, he released a powerful force from the mountain. He wanted to use this force to suppress the other party, so that the other party could feel his strength. At least this way, the other party would not be able to resist. But what he didn't expect was that this guy wasn't like before at all. Or rather, this demon god's heart already had some rebellious thoughts, and he didn't intend to continue like this. If you want to subdue me, you'll have to see if you have the strength to do so. After saying this, the long sword began to shatter into pieces. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan frowned slightly. Naturally, he could see that this guy was prepared to fight to the death with him. But at this moment, before Lin Yuan could do anything, the Sky Martial Azura beside him rushed out. Formed the Sky Martial Array. As soon as he finished speaking, an extremely violent force began to spread from the bodies of these people. This was not a special kind of power. Instead, it was like a shackle that controlled the heart of the demon god in front of them. Master, although this guy seems to be using the weapon spirits of these weapons, it's just a disguise. Because the most important thing is this demon god's heart. It's the source of everything. As long as you can subdue this heart, you can control the current situation. Lin Yuan didn't expect these Sky Martial Azuras to have such an ability. Then, he realized what was going on. Because the Tian Wushura had been stationed here, they must be very familiar with this demon god's heart. If they had a way to control it, it was only natural that this guy would be able to do it. When he thought of this, Lin Yuan smiled. Alright, since that's the case, I'll use force to break the technique. When he said this, a rainbow-colored light appeared in his hand. Then, he directly grabbed the heart. At this moment, the sword had already shattered. But at this moment, the armor revealed some of its formation. Streaks of light shone from the armor. However, these streaks of light were blocking Lin Yuan's attack. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan sneered and reached in directly. Of course, he knew that in this situation, he had no other way to solve the current trouble. At this moment, he had already lost his patience. He didn't want to wait any longer. He wanted to know what was going to happen. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan's expression became somewhat impatient. However, compared to Lin Yuan's methods, the armor's defense was really not enough. Not only was it not enough, at this moment, there was almost no way to make this guy in front of him actually reach this heart. This was the consciousness of the demon god. What demon god? Although his body was torn apart and scattered on every floor of the pagoda, he wasn't unconscious. In other words, he wasn't completely defenseless in his current state. However, when Lin Yuan stretched out his hand, he realized that all his hopes seemed to have been cut off. At this moment, he didn't hesitate at all. At this moment, all his expressions began to distort. In fact, Lin Yuan's performance at this moment could be said to be the proof. Because at this moment, his method actually broke the light and even shattered the armor. Then, he grabbed the heart. I'd like to see how you can escape from my hands. After saying this, he finally stopped. Then, as the heart entered his hand, the sea of flowers disappeared without a trace. It was as if nothing had happened. Chapter 1253. When Lin Yuan turned his head again, he found that there was another path in front of him. It was a path that led to the next floor. This was another floor of the pagoda. Lin Yuan understood that if he wanted to collect all the demon gods' bodies, he had to go through the floors one by one. Therefore, he didn't hesitate and stepped forward. Little Iron Egg, who was behind them, was indeed hesitant. He could already see for himself just how powerful his master was. At the same time, he could clearly feel that if he didn't have the same strength as his master, he would only be a burden if he went up for a meal. Lin Yuan turned his head and found that Little Iron Egg wasn't following him, so he turned around. Aren't you going to follow me up and take a look? Lin Yuan's voice was cold. He naturally knew that although this kid was a destined Azura, there were some things that couldn't be changed. For example, this kid didn't want to go up any further. However, the heavenly dance Azuras beside him also stepped forward at this moment. Lord Supreme, please don't go up any further. If you go any further, you might face more than a simple battle. After he finished speaking, Lin Yuan just smiled. He already knew why Little Iron Egg changed his mind and didn't want to go any further. Little Iron Egg, do you know where your weakness is? Because you don't dare to take this step, your advancement will probably stop here. If you really want to stop here, then I won't force you. In any case, our fate as master and disciple ends here. Lin Yuan didn't need a weakling by his side. He also didn't want to find a weakling disciple who didn't even have the courage to challenge the pagoda. When he finished speaking, Little Iron Egg's expression suddenly hardened. "Master, it's not that I don't want to go any further, but I'm afraid that my appearance will cause you some unnecessary trouble. After all, with your strength, if you want to wear it, it won't be afraid. But if you bring me along, I'm afraid." Although he didn't finish his sentence, Lin Yuan understood the meaning behind it. This guy was simply thinking about dragging him down. Lin Yuan smiled faintly. "This is not something you should be thinking about. What you should be thinking about is how to increase your own strength and become a great help to me." He knew that if he wanted to turn this desolate city into a fertile land, he needed people who could use it. Now, the little guy in front of him was a useful person, and he was also a disciple that he thought highly of. However, if he was really controlled by these secular ideas, then he would not be able to improve. Lin Yuan didn't want such a moldable talent to stop here, so he said those words. Little Iron Egg's expression suddenly became unusually solemn as he spoke. "Since Master has said so, then no matter what, I will use my last bit of strength to serve Master." As he said this, he took the first step up the stairs without hesitation. Lin Yuan only smiled faintly. He naturally knew what this kid was thinking, but in his opinion, even if this kid had other ideas, he must restrain them at this moment. What he needed was not only this little iron egg, but also a person. He also needed other powerful helpers. Only then could he revive this ghost town. Lin Yuan already had a plan in his mind, so he walked step by step on this boundless ancient road. When he encountered this iron tower, he knew that this place was definitely not simple. At least, it wasn't like what he saw. This place was very likely a branch of the worshipping god Pope. Moreover, the reason why these people from the bad god religion set up this place so far away was to make it easier for them to control their fighting style. It felt like a village surrounding a city. After Lin Yuan climbed the stairs again, the scenery in front of him suddenly changed. His expression slightly changed because he found that what appeared in front of him was not the sea of flowers from before, but an ocean. It was a quiet and peaceful ocean, and countless rays of warm sunlight shone on the seaside. Lin Yuan felt relaxed and happy. Even if he knew that the scenery in front of him was fake, he didn't want to say it out loud. At least in his opinion, everything in front of him was enough to confirm that this place was definitely more dangerous than the previous floor. When it came to creating an illusion, the more realistic it was, the more powerful the creator was. Therefore, he was certain that the protector of this floor was many times stronger than the Sky Marshal Shura from before. This was because when he reached out to touch the water, he could even feel its warmth. This change more or less surprised him. To be able to purchase such a large scene, perhaps even the strength of the 3 demon emperors wouldn't be enough. He directly took a step forward. At this moment, Little Iron Egg was a little dazed. "Master, what should we do in this boundless ocean?" As soon as he finished his sentence, Lin Yuan gently nodded. "Actually, we don't need any other methods. As long as we can use our own methods to cross over, it will be fine." Then, a 7-colored halo appeared on Lin Yuan's hand, and it drilled under his feet. He controlled the 7-colored light and floated above the sea. When Little Bruiser saw this, he immediately became fascinated. "Master, what method is this? Can you teach me?" Although Little Iron Egg was a natural Azura, he was still a child. It was inevitable that he would feel like a child. Lin Yuan smiled and stretched out his hand. Another 7-colored halo floated under his feet. "Give it a try. Don't fall into the sea. I'm not sure if there's any danger in there." When he finished speaking, he had already steered the rainbow light forward. Little Iron Egg carefully tested it for a while before gradually getting the hang of it. As for those iron blood Azuras, they had already drilled into Little Iron Egg's body. They had souls and existed in form. Therefore, they could directly drill into Little Iron Egg's body at this moment. This was actually beneficial to both of them. Lin Yuan didn't care too much. However, the moment they entered the sea, the waves began to surge. Chapter 1254. Seeing this, Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He knew that there must be something else hidden here. The other demon gods were strange, so he wasn't in a hurry. Instead, he squinted his eyes and looked in front of him. Little iron egg, stabilize your body. Don't be scared. This thing is just a way to deal with us in this situation. After Lin Yuan finished speaking, little iron egg's body became even more unstable. He wasn't familiar with controlling the seven-colored cloud, so his movements became jerky at this moment. Master, don't scare me. He was clearly not used to this method of walking on the waves on the sea. He even started to make mistakes again and again, almost falling into the sea. Lin Yuan just smiled. He knew that little iron egg hadn't been tested enough. This situation was the perfect opportunity to test him. Therefore, he didn't hesitate at all. Gradually, at the moment of this change, Lin Yuan had already stretched out his hand and grabbed little iron egg in front of him. Control your emotions. Don't be scared by the scene in front of you. Otherwise, you won't be able to participate in the battle later. After saying this, little iron egg couldn't control his emotions anymore. Under such circumstances, it was already difficult for him to control his body. However, Lin Yuan's words made him lose his patience. Lin Yuan just shook his head when he saw this. However, the waves started to become more and more violent. It seemed that something under the water was desperately causing trouble for them and even wanted to overturn them. Lin Yuan didn't say anything. His eyes were fixed on the water. He knew that the thing hidden under the water was definitely not that simple. At least, in his opinion, it definitely wouldn't be easy to deal with it. The demon god's heart had already caused such a big commotion. Now, he could feel that no matter what happened at this moment, there should be traces to follow. However, all of a sudden, a tentacle stretched out. Lin Yuan frowned slightly. Why did this thing look so much like the special demon king he had fought before? It was the octopus demon king. He suddenly stretched out his hand and directly grabbed the tentacle. However, when he touched the tentacle suddenly sprayed out a kind of purple-red ink. Just by looking at its color, one could tell that it was highly toxic. However, Lin Yuan did use his own seven-colored light to form a light barrier, covering his hand and blocking the opponent's attack. Little Bruiser clenched his fists when he saw this. He knew from the very beginning that his appearance would bring trouble to his master, so he was able to remain calm. He wasn't too flustered, and had even calmed down a bit. He didn't say a word as he stood on the seven-colored halo. Lin Yuan had indeed broken a tentacle. The moment he stretched out his hand, the tentacle of the octopus broke. It seemed that the octopus knew that it was no match for him. Lin Yuan clearly felt that these guys were cunning. If he really let them go on like this, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to escape from here. When he thought of this, he didn't hesitate at all. This time, he was prepared to cover his whole body with the seven-colored light and plunge into the water. He wanted to see what was exerting pressure on him. However, the moment he covered his body with the seven-colored light, the waves directly slapped him like a golden wave. Not only him, but also Little Bruiser beside him. Lin Yuan also arranged a seven-colored light on Little Bruiser's body in the midst of the chaos. Only then did he know that this light could protect Little Bruiser's life. When he thought of this, he didn't hesitate at all. At this moment, he directly stepped out and dived into the sea. At this moment, he discovered that there were actually countless strange creatures under the water staring at him. He was also a little puzzled. He didn't react in time, right? What was going on? In his opinion, these underwater creatures shouldn't be so aggressive. However, when his gaze fell on the eyes of these underwater monsters, he knew that they must be controlled by the so-called demon god's body. This was because their eyes were flickering with a scarlet color. This scarlet color was the same as the color emitted by the demon god's heart. Seeing that he had already fallen into the encirclement, Lin Yuan was not nervous at all. He even felt that this so-called stranger was more or less a bit low. However, this method of controlling these sea creatures was really too low level. However, just as he was thinking about this, an extremely huge force suddenly enveloped Lin Yuan's body. Rather than saying that it was an enormous power, it would be more accurate to say that it was a massive shadow. The reaction was so huge that he didn't even have the intention to completely avoid it. He couldn't even avoid this shadow because this shadow was so huge that it had already covered a large area of the sea. At this moment, that guy suddenly opened his mouth, and a huge suction force directly appeared in the water. Even the water and Lin Yuan were sucked into the giant's mouth. Lin Yuan frowned slightly. With the protection of the colorful light, there was no problem at all. However, he didn't know what kind of creature he was in, but looking at the gorgeous internal organs and skin around him, he didn't know. He knew that this guy was at least a few dozen meters away. However, he suddenly had some special thoughts. Such a big thing, if he ate it, he was afraid that it would take a long time. However, he immediately erased this idea from his heart because the smell here was really not good. At the moment when he was about to penetrate this guy's stomach, he found that there were shining gems one after another in this guy's stomach. These gems should be the essence of this thing's cultivation. Although Lin Yuan had no need for these things, and he didn't care about such things, Little Iron Egg really needed these things now. Lin Yuan didn't have any other thoughts at this time. He took a step forward and was ready to dig out a stone from this guy's body. However, when his hand touched this guy's internal organs, he found that something was wrong. Chapter 1255. Because the moment his hand touched this guy's body, it was as if there was a huge suction force sucking out the power in his body. It felt as if a needle had pierced into his body and extracted some blood. Lin Yuan's expression was a little ugly. He didn't expect that he would meet such a difficult guy and fail miserably at such an easy task. However, this gave him a special idea. Little Iron Egg was probably still lacking a set of armor. If he could kill this thing and use its body parts to make armor for Little Iron Egg, it wouldn't be a bad idea. Lin Yuan was angry when he thought of this. He tried to use the colorful light in his body to cut the monster's internal organs. However, he didn't expect the monster's internal organs to be so tough. Even he couldn't cut them open. The most important thing is that at this moment, without the slightest sign, this guy, that is, the body of this behemoth, actually began to twist, and then his internal organs also wriggled, as if to directly crush Lin Yuan. This made him feel a little passive, because at this moment, all his thoughts had already landed on this guy. After checking and understanding the situation, he should have a 90% chance of succeeding. However, he didn't expect to make such a mistake. Lin Yuan gently held his cheek with one hand. He was thinking about what to do next. He could clearly feel the strength of the monster's internal organs. He could even clearly feel that the monster was shrinking step by step, as if it was going to crush him. Lin Yuan suddenly took out the demon god's heart. This thing was so powerful. It must have something to do with the stranger's restaurant. However, the moment he took out the demon god's heart, the surrounding stones all rushed toward the heart in his hand. There was no need to dig them out. It was as if they belonged to the heart. Lin Yuan's expression froze. What's going on? Wait. He suddenly realized a problem. This seemed to be the demon god's blood. When the blood returned to the heart, it made the strange heart stronger. Lin Yuan didn't expect that taking out the strange heart would have such a benefit. However, he couldn't care less now. Since the strange heart worked, and the monster had this type of blood, he didn't hesitate to gather all of them together. At least this was of some use to him. Thinking of this, Lin Yuan, you will directly start to swim in the body of this giant. Of course, he knew that if he wasn't careful at this moment, he might not encounter any danger, but he would miss out on the things inside. He didn't want to get his hands on an incomplete demon god. He couldn't afford to lose even a little bit. Therefore, at this moment, he didn't have the slightest bit of hesitation. He almost went to every corner of this guy. Although this guy would absorb his power, after a while, he would use the power of this demon god's heart on himself. This was a balance. The monster would absorb his power, and the strange heart would absorb the monster's power. In the end, the heart would send the power to him. This was equivalent to a cycle. It was just a waste of one more process. Lin Yuan didn't think that the demon god's heart was the only thing in this place. Looking at the state of the previous layer, there should be some special secrets hidden in this place. For example, one of the demon god's bodies. However, he didn't know where the demon god's body was. He didn't know which part of the strange body was sealed in this layer. Therefore, it was no different from looking for a needle in a haystack. But just as he was deep in thought, he suddenly felt a clear impact coming from outside. Lin Yuan was a little puzzled. Logically speaking, in this place, in such a deep sea, such a behemoth should not be attacked. But why was there something constantly attacking him, and why was it that this huge monster was reaching out? Suddenly, he thought of something. It was very likely to be Little Iron Egg. Although this guy had always been a little timid, he was always able to erupt with indescribable power at critical moments. Lin Yuan finally didn't want to hold back anymore. He knew that if he let Little Iron Egg continue to hit him, this kid wouldn't be able to withstand the squeezing power of the monster's internal organs, even if he had the protection of his rainbow energy. If this little disciple of his really died, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. Without any hesitation, he rushed out of the room. At this moment, he didn't hold back anymore. He punched the monster's inner skin from the inside. He didn't hesitate anymore. He was afraid that something would happen to his little disciple. If that happened, it would be difficult to deal with. Moreover, he only used his physical strength this time. He didn't borrow any other power. Therefore, even if the monster wanted to absorb the energy in his body, it wouldn't be able to do so. Seeing that it was being attacked from two sides, the monster finally couldn't hold back anymore. Then, a stream of stinky liquid gushed out of its body. Lin Yuan originally wanted to smash the monster into pieces with his punches. However, he didn't expect that the monster would be so disgusting as to expel the stinky and sour digestive liquid. He didn't hesitate anymore. This time, he directly punched the monster's skin with the rainbow light. Then, he exerted his strength. In an instant, the monster's skin and flesh exploded. Then, a stream of blood gushed out of the monster's body. The seawater outside also washed away its internal organs at this moment. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and slowly walked out of the monster's body step by step. Outside was Little Iron Egg. However, the rainbow light on his body had become extremely dim, as if it was about to disappear. Lin Yuan smiled dotingly. Silly boy, how can you be a match for him? The moment he saw Lin Yuan, Little Iron Egg's face lit up with surprise. Master, you're really here. After saying this, he couldn't hold back his emotions anymore. He directly pounced on Lin Yuan. At this moment, Lin Yuan just waved his hand gently. A light green light enveloped Little Iron Egg's body. Chapter 1256. The moment he saw Lin Yuan, a look of surprise appeared on Little Iron Egg's face. Master, you're really here. After saying this, he couldn't hold back his emotions and directly rushed towards Lin Yuan. At this moment, Lin Yuan just waved his hand gently, and a light green light directly enveloped Little Iron Egg's body. No matter what you want to say now, you can swallow it back. This sentence made Little Iron Egg feel strange. He directly rushed in to save him without caring about his own safety. Why was his master treating him so coldly now? Little Iron Egg didn't seem to understand what was going on at all. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan knew that Little Iron Egg had misunderstood. Because he knew that Little Iron Egg was with him, the two of them didn't have the leisure to care about love at all. There were many huge sea creatures around them. At this moment, Lin Yuan already knew that this underwater world was unusual. But he didn't expect Little Iron Egg to misunderstand him at this time. At this moment, a violent current directly swept towards the two of them. Lin Yuan directly pulled Little Iron Egg and dodged. Then he said indifferently, "Now is not the time to talk about this. There are still some special things here that we haven't dealt with yet. When he finished speaking, he had already rushed to the side. There were a few fishes that had grown human arms and bodies. These guys looked very powerful, but for some reason, Lin Yuan felt that they had a very similar aura to the devil god from before. It was as if these things were born from the devil god. However, Lin Yuan still frowned. He knew that the matter of the eye was definitely not that simple, but at this moment, he was already prepared. His movements began to become swift and fierce, and the surrounding special fish began to attack them on their own accord. Lin Yuan frowned. Although these guys' attack power wasn't strong, their attacks were extremely troublesome. Moreover, every attack could create a whirlpool underwater. Lin Yuan knew that the whirlpool was their attack method. They were doing this to disrupt his attack method. It was also to distract his attention. Little Iron Egg, listen to me. These guys are not the ones who are mainly attacking us. There are other powerful creatures around us. Lin Yuan didn't hesitate. After saying this, he was about to do something else. But he didn't know when he was trapped in a cage made of water. Lin Yuan didn't seem to be able to react. They didn't expect these underwater creatures to have such intelligence. In such a situation, they had actually unleashed their most powerful strength. Furthermore, they had used a group attack to trap him here. Not only him, but even Little Bruiser had not been able to escape the calamity. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan's eyes slightly narrowed slightly. He could clearly see that these guys in front of him weren't just using this special method to attack, they were using the power of the sea. Lin Yuan frowned slightly. He naturally knew that in this situation, no matter what he did, there was no way to escape from here. The only thing he could do was to use force to break through. At that moment, waves after waves of water surged towards him. Little Iron Egg now understood why his master had told him not to speak. In this kind of crisis, speaking would only distract him. Therefore, Lin Yuan knew that they were doing this for his own good. When he thought of this, he couldn't speak. He could only stand there silently. Alright, I didn't expect that you guys would actually have such a method. However, if you think that this is enough to deal with me, you're underestimating me too much. After he finished speaking, he took a step forward without any hesitation. Right at this moment, the cage-like stream of water that had been condensed to the side had already been confined to the ground. It seemed like it wanted to firmly trap him there. Every movement he made would cause the water around him to resist. The resistance was very clear and powerful. Lin Yuan had never thought that he would encounter such a situation. However, he quickly calmed down and squinted his eyes as he looked at everything before him. Nobody responded to him, because all the creatures in the water were looking at him with extreme vigilance. In their eyes, this human was their mortal enemy. And the behemoth that should have been lurking here has not appeared yet. At least, Lin Yuan felt that this guy was more powerful than the other behemoths, he did not know how many times. Furthermore, he could sense that this creature had been waiting for him all this time. It clearly had ulterior motives. Lin Yuan's eyes started to look around. He knew that there was definitely something special in this place. However, this creature had yet to appear, which made him more or less puzzled. However, he immediately became vigilant because he felt that the changes in the water were becoming more obvious. The waves and vibrations seemed like something was about to come out from a certain direction. Little Iron Egg, who was watching from the side, was also a little nervous. Master, do you want me to release the Sky Dance Azuras and have a bloody battle with them? Lin Yuan shook his head. Although these creatures looked extremely ferocious, they couldn't do much in the water. Moreover, their methods weren't used underwater. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes. He had already come up with a countermeasure, but he was prepared to go deeper. He wanted this creature to come out by itself. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan's hand didn't even emit a bit of light. It was as if he didn't care about his surroundings at all. At that moment, a tall tortoise or a stone tablet slowly crawled over from not far away. The tortoise's movement seemed to be very slow, but with every step it took, its figure would leave behind afterimages. This thing should be the real deal. Lin Yuan smiled slightly. He had already seen the tortoise carrying the stone tablet. Chapter 1257. Lin Yuan wasn't nervous when he saw the old man, and he even had a smile on his face. However, Little Iron Egg wasn't as calm as Wang Yao. In his opinion, the behemoth-like old man in front of him was so powerful that it was terrifying. The old man's aura wasn't something that he could contend with. He even felt like he was just a little bug crawling under the other party's feet. Lin Yuan didn't have much to do, so he just quietly watched the old man approach him. He also absorbed all the pressure from the wall of water beside him. Finally, the old turtle said, "Do you think you can fight against us in a place like this? In the water, us water races are invincible." When the old turtle said this, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of water. The water was like a sharp sword, rushing towards Lin Yuan and Little Iron Egg. Seeing this, Little Iron Egg snorted and clenched his fists. He took a step forward and punched out. The water flow seemed to be unable to withstand his punch and had already begun to appear. The depression had even formed a vacuum at this moment. However, Little Iron Egg was still too weak. At least, he was far from being able to compete with the behemoth in front of him. Lin Yuan directly fell in front of Little Iron Egg. Finally, the water collided with Lin Yuan's power. At this moment, Lin Yuan didn't hesitate at all. He directly took a step forward. "Old Wang, right? Do you really think that you're invincible when you're down there? I can tell you clearly that no matter what you think, you can't realize it at this moment, even if you think that you are an aquatic race." After Lin Yuan finished speaking, he fiercely clenched his fist. Then, outside the wall of water, a 7-colored light began to bloom. He had already prepared a backup plan. At this moment, he didn't hesitate at all and directly activated his hidden means. At this moment, the old turtle was also shocked. He didn't expect the human in front of him to be so terrifying, and it wasn't over yet. Lin Yuan just slammed the ground, and then a scorching heat rose up, and the space they were in instantly turned into a vacuum. Or rather, all the water was sucked away. The old turtle was also stunned for a moment. He didn't know how many years it had been since he went ashore. At this moment, he seemed to feel a little flustered as the water flow left him. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and smiled slightly. Without any hesitation, he stepped out of the world and punched the old turtle's shell fiercely. He could see that there must be something special about the 10 times, but he didn't want to think about it now. He just wanted to do his best to deal with this old turtle in front of him. After all, from his point of view, although it seemed like he was the one who was attacked and trapped, he knew that this guy's strongest point was his defense. Attacking wasn't his forte, and if he wanted to get through this, he had to defeat this guy. Moreover, he could also see that this guy in front of him should have the strength of 2 demon kings. Lin Yuan had just punched out, and the old turtle narrowed his eyes in an instant. Then, Lin Yuan clearly saw layers of water flow begin to cover this guy's body, as if forming a layer of armor for him. Lin Yuan's attack was like a clay ox entering the sea. Seeing this change, Little Iron Egg's expression changed, because he could see that his master's current attack method didn't seem to be enough to destroy this guy in front of him. What could he do? He didn't have the strength to deal with this guy in front of him at all. If he really acted hastily, he was afraid that he would cause trouble for his master. Just as he was hesitating, Lin Yuan suddenly stretched out his hand and pointed at the stone tablet. "Old turtle, I know that this 10 times is your lifeblood, and it's where the array formation is. If you still want to fight to the death with us, I will not hesitate to shatter this stone tablet of yours. At that time, everything here will be destroyed, and even you will disappear." Given Lin Yuan's experience, how could he not know that this guy in front of him must have some special problems? These problems appeared on the stone tablet. He also clearly felt that the demon god's heart in his hand had given him a hint at this moment. There must be another body of the demon god in this old turtle's body. Therefore, it was not convenient for him to directly kill this old turtle in front of him. He wanted to dig out the truth of this old turtle bit by bit. After all, this guy was not as simple as the armor and weapons he had seen before. He was just a weapon spirit, and he had been controlled by the demon god's heart. The old turtle in front of him was obviously a demon king. Therefore, he wanted to change to other methods and means, at least it wouldn't take so much effort. However, just as he was thinking about this, the old turtle snorted coldly. "If you want to say that, then I have to thank you because I don't want to carry this equipment for the rest of my life. I don't know how many unfair things I've encountered because of this equipment. If you can, why don't you help me?" It was obvious from what this guy said and did at this moment that he was messing with Lin Yuan's mentality. Seeing this scene, he just said softly, "In that case, I'll help you dissect it." When Lin Yuan finished speaking, he had already taken a step forward, because he could feel that the old tortoise that appeared in front of him at this moment was ready to attack. Suddenly, waves began to surge in front of him. The mist had long disappeared, and at this moment, Lin Yuan found that this guy could actually use the water to penetrate the vacuum defense he had set up and directly rush in. Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. Good. I didn't expect you to have such a method. In that case, I won't stand on ceremony." After saying this, a brilliant sword appeared in his hand. At this moment, he directly held this sword in his hand and slashed the old turtle's shell in front of him, creating sparks. It was as if he had gone mad as he continued to attack without stopping. Chapter 1258. Lin Yuan then said to Little Iron Egg, "Kid, watch carefully. This is the willow sword dance of the wind. Although it's not a profound sword art, it should be the best for you to use it in your current state. Watch carefully." After he finished speaking, he took a step forward without any hesitation. Cold light flashed. The old turtle didn't have any means to restrain the guy in front of him, so he could only control himself and the flow of water around him. He could only defend. For him, this kind of attack had already broken through his cognition, and at this moment, Lin Yuan was only using 30% of his strength. Of course, this was to let Little Iron Egg learn this technique. He clearly knew that this guy's defense must be outstanding. The willow sword dance of the wind was actually suitable for Little Iron Egg's current sword art. That was why he took this opportunity to launch an attack with such a perfect sandbag. Little Iron Egg, who was next to him, was even more entranced. He didn't expect his master to be so powerful that he could still make such a move under such circumstances. Even that guy who could suppress him with just his aura didn't seem to have any power to fight back against his master's opponent. He was completely captivated by her beauty. It was because he had never seen such a constitution and method before. Moreover, he could clearly feel that at this moment, there should have been other ways to restrain his master. However, for some reason, the old fox just lay on the ground obediently and didn't dare to make the slightest move. Lin Yuan frowned slightly when he saw this. He still wants to resist. He had originally thought that he could use this opportunity to let Little Iron Egg learn more, but he hadn't expected that the old tortoise would actually think of another way. At this moment, rays of golden light flashed on the old tortoise's shell. This was the old turtle's special skill, the golden bell protection. At this moment, his whole body seemed to be wearing a layer of golden armor. Seeing such a scene, Lin Yuan just narrowed his eyes, and his movements were faster and more urgent. However, what he didn't expect was that at this moment, both the old turtle and the stone tablet on his body actually cracked. When Lin Yuan saw this scene, he was slightly stunned. He didn't expect such a change at this moment. His face turned pale as he looked at the tortoise. "I didn't think that the stone tablet would be broken in the end." Earlier, he was clearly just bluffing. Once he left this stone tablet, he wouldn't be able to use any of his techniques. The scene in front of him made him turn his head slightly. "All right, since you broke my equipment, I don't need to maintain this appearance anymore." After saying that, a red hair flashed on the stone tablet and something floated in the water. Lin Yuan looked up and found that it was a skull made of white bones. He knew that it should belong to the demon god, but he didn't understand why it would appear at this time. Because in his opinion, shouldn't this thing be sealed in the old turtle's body? Why would it appear directly in this stone tablet? Lin Yuan frowned. No matter what, I can't be too careless. If I really destroy the demon god's head at this time, I'm afraid that everything will be in vain. All my previous plans will also come to an end here. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly. He knew that this matter definitely wouldn't end so easily. However, the big turtle in front of him had now turned into a person. He was now holding a harpoon in his left hand and a shield in his right. And this shield was his turtle shell. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly. He could see that this guy in front of him was going to fight to the death with him. However, the old tortoise's movements were far faster than he had imagined. At this moment, the old tortoise seemed to be even faster than when he was in the water. He stomped on the ground fiercely, causing the soft sand on the ground to explode. Then, the harpoon in his hand also stabbed towards Lin Yuan's body. Lin Yuan fiercely swung the sword in his hand. His sword just happened to touch the harpoon, and at this moment, the turtle shell shield in the old turtle's hand also began to spin rapidly in an instant. One blade after another spun out from below. Seeing this scene, Little Iron Egg, who was next to him, almost couldn't help but exclaim, "Master, be careful." But before he could finish his words, Lin Yuan had already punched the tortoise shell fiercely, and the tortoise shell shattered with a loud sound. Almost in an instant, it had already turned into fragments on the ground. When they saw this scene, the people around them couldn't believe their eyes. Instead of calling it a human, it was better to call it an aquatic creature. They simply couldn't believe that this big turtle, who had always been known to be invincible in front of them, would end up like this. Lin Yuan didn't say anything. Instead, he sighed softly. "I didn't want to kill you directly, but you were the one who recklessly came to me." However, what he didn't expect was that this guy actually began to devour his turtle shell bit by bit, as if to replenish some kind of power in his body. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He didn't expect this guy to be so crazy in the past. He didn't give up even in this state. However, he discovered another scene. Because not far away, the demon god's skull floating in the water seemed to be sending waves of energy to the old tortoise. Lin Yuan finally knew where the problem was. It was the demon god's skull floating in the water. Without any hesitation, he rushed forward. Seeing this scene, the demon god's skull just floated gently, and then the surrounding aquatic creatures rushed towards Lin Yuan as if they didn't care about their lives. When Little Iron Egg saw this scene, he couldn't bear it anymore. He clenched his fist and rushed over, ready to fight with these guys. However, Lin Yuan waved his hand and stretched out a hand. A colorful light instantly wrapped around his arm. At this moment, he seemed to be the absolute king of this underwater world, directly controlling everything. Chapter 1259. Lin Yuan's action caught the other guys off guard. At this moment, they felt that the world in the water that they relied on for survival had come to a standstill. It was as if this world didn't exist at all. Lin Yuan wasn't affected at all. Instead, he walked forward step by step. Seeing this, Lin Yuan seemed to have forgotten everything. He walked forward step by step and even threw the sword to Little Iron Egg. With every step he took, the bodies of the surrounding marine creatures began to crack to different degrees. Blood had already dyed the sea here red. The old turtle tried to move, but his body was too weak. He couldn't move at all. Under such circumstances, he could only stare blankly at Lin Yuan. I thought this so-called deity warden's head would have some other means to broaden my horizons, but now it seems that it's nothing much. This wasn't a provocation. It was like a superior looking down on a subordinate. In this situation, no one dared to say a word because they could feel that the guy standing in front of them was like a master of absolute power. They had no chance of surviving under his hands. Every step Lin Yuan took could kill a marine creature directly. This was his method. Whether it was cultivation or strength, he was many times stronger than these guys in front of him. Therefore, at this moment, every step he took could affect these guys around him. Seeing this change, the old turtle sighed softly as if he had finally given up resisting. In that case, I won't resist anymore. I only ask that you let them live. So no matter what you want to do to me, I will cooperate with you. After saying this, Lin Yuan nodded in satisfaction. However, he didn't stop. He still took a step forward. He didn't stop until all the water channels close to the old turtle exploded. If you had said so earlier, you wouldn't have wasted so much effort, Lin Yuan said as if he had just swatted a fly. Then, he turned to look at Little Iron Egg. He even waved his hand at him. Come. Little Iron Egg didn't know what to do. He walked over with the sword in his hand. Lin Yuan then pointed to the aquatic creatures next to him and said, "Kill them all for me." Not only did the turtle not react, but even Little Iron Egg didn't understand what was going on. What the hell is going on? Master, what do you mean? How come I don't understand? Lin Yuan just shook his head gently. You don't need to understand. You just need to do as I say. These guys dared to make a move against us. Death is their only fate. Lin Yuan's voice was cold and emotionless after he finished speaking. However, what he wanted was absolute control of this place. The fact that the vast ancient path had appeared in this place meant that there was something lacking about this place. If these fellows left, they would only cause trouble for Little Bruiser in the future. When he thought of this, Lin Yuan did not hesitate and immediately thought of this fate. However, when the old turtle saw this scene, he couldn't hold back anymore. He directly knelt in front of Lin Yuan. I beg you, as long as you let them go, none of us will stop you from taking a step forward. Lin Yuan shook his head. Kneeling under such conditions is meaningless to me. So what if you kneel? You won't be able to move me. When Lin Yuan finished speaking, he glared at Little Iron Egg fiercely. Why aren't you going? What are you waiting for? Now, all the aquatic creatures were controlled by his absolute power. They were frightened, and no one dared to have any thoughts of resistance. After Lin Yuan finished speaking, Little Iron Egg finally picked up his sword and walked forward. He knew that this was a very important test for him. Therefore, at this moment, he decided to follow his master's orders. But as soon as he took this step, he realized that something was wrong. Because at this moment, when all of Lin Yuan's movements and actions had just appeared, the old tortoise was already ready to make a move. He wanted to rely on the strength of his two demon kings to self-destruct. Little Iron Egg didn't have much time to care about other things. He directly turned around and slashed his sword. He directly stabbed towards the old turtle. Lin Yuan stretched out a finger and pointed directly at the tip of the sword. I'll keep this guy for myself. You deal with the others. After saying this, one of his hands was ready to slap down. At this moment, he finally spoke. I'll use the specific location of the other demon gods in exchange for a chance to live. What do you think? The old turtle finally said something that interested him. Lin Yuan looked at this guy with a smile. Then how can I be sure that what you said is true? You won't lie to me. When he said this, there was no other reaction. At this moment, he had already integrated all his thoughts into his actions. He grabbed the old tortoise by the neck. At this moment, the turtle shook his head gently. It's meaningless for me to lie to you now. Besides, you can also take my clansmen to the next level. Lin Yuan directly threw the old turtle to the ground. The moment the stone tablet was destroyed, the surrounding seawater had already evaporated. I don't think you have the guts to lie to me again. I'll spare your clansmen's lives. When he said this, Iron Egg finally breathed a sigh of relief. Seeing this change, Lin Yuan smiled slightly. He finally knew what he wanted to know. Finally, he looked at the old turtle. It's not impossible to lose their lives, but now, you have to show me the way to the next level. Right now, he had no way of distinguishing where the entrance to the next level was hidden in this world that was already filled with seawater. And he was too lazy to think about it anymore. He just asked the old turtle to help him find the place and location. Hearing this, the old turtle sighed softly. Then, he stretched out his hand and pointed. Then, as soon as he appeared, he directly appeared in front of them. This is the passage to the next level. However, to enter the passage, you need to have a strong physical body. Otherwise, you won't be able to pass through here. Chapter 1260. Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly when he heard that. This was because he could sense that even though he had obtained the God Fiend's head this time, he still needed to use some sort of method. That's right, but I'm afraid that I'll need some special methods to do what I need to do next, because what the old turtle said wasn't a lie. He could clearly feel the appearance of the vortex. The pressure was so great that he couldn't even react in time. However, right at that moment, the tortoise's gaze suddenly landed on Bruiser. He seemed to want to say something but stopped himself. However, I'm afraid this little brother won't be able to enter from here. His physical body isn't strong enough. He didn't say what he wanted to say. There was no need for him to say it. Everyone understood the meaning behind his words. Earlier, he had said that he needed a strong fleshly body, so he didn't want to let Little Iron Egg go in. Lin Yuan also turned his gaze and looked at Little Iron Egg next to him. Do you want to go in? This was an extremely simple action, but it stirred up endless waves in Little Iron Egg's heart. This was because he knew that if he wanted to go in, his master would let him in no matter what method he came up with. He had some doubts because he knew that he was too weak. Moreover, the old turtle should be able to tell that his current state wasn't enough to directly rush in. He gently nodded, then shook his head. Although I want to go in, with my current strength, I'm afraid it will be very difficult for me to display my strength in there, and I'm afraid I might not even be able to protect my own life. Lin Yuan frowned. I'm only asking if you want to go in, not if you can protect your own life. After saying that, Little Iron Egg's face was filled with joy. He immediately became excited. Master, are you saying that I have a way to go in from here? He had benefited greatly from this trip. Just by watching his master fight, he already felt that he had benefited immensely. Under such circumstances, how could he not want to take another step forward and continue to break through? Lin Yuan chuckled when he saw Little Iron Egg's expression. Of course, as long as you can freely use your own cultivation method. The killing will incantation he had given to Little Bruiser could allow him to use blood-dripping dash, and even reach a certain level of the undying bending body. However, a restriction like that wasn't enough to keep the little guy in check. He also knew that the little guy had such a reaction because he was worried that he would become a country bumpkin. That was why this guy spoke like that. However, when he saw this change, Lin Yuan sighed softly. From today onwards, you must remember that no matter what, you must come here with absolute confidence and caution. You must come here with the attitude of an expert. From now on, I will confer you the title of God. At that time, you will be in control of this situation. If you can't complete the task I give you, don't call yourself my disciple anymore. This was the last time Lin Yuan told Little Iron Tower. This was also the last time he could comfort his fragile confidence. After all, he did not need weaklings, whether in terms of mentality or strength. Hearing this, Little Iron Egg's expression suddenly turned solemn. He nodded his head. Of course, he knew that his master wouldn't lie under such circumstances. However, when he fully circulated the killing will incantation, he felt that he couldn't resist the power of the whirlpool. His entire body was rooted to the spot. He didn't know what to do. However, Little Iron Egg's helplessness didn't allow Lin Yuan to comfort him again. Lin Yuan didn't even look at him. Lin Yuan's actions were to tell Little Iron Egg that he had to face the situation by himself no matter what. No one else could help him. Under such circumstances, no one could help him. Lin Yuan didn't say anything when he saw this change. Instead, he sat quietly at the side. He knew that Little Iron Egg still needed some time. A normal old man would also sit cross-legged on the ground. Although Little Iron Egg had transformed into his human form, there was still a faint turtle shell on his back. Seeing this, Lin Yuan smiled gently. He knew that the old turtle wasn't very confident, so he directly went up to the next floor. He was sure that the old turtle didn't know what would happen up there, so at this moment, the old turtle was condensing his strength. Lin Yuan waited quietly. If Little Iron Egg didn't have absolute confidence, he knew that there would definitely be some special problems. When he thought of this, he no longer hesitated. Or rather, it was useless to hesitate now. At this moment, all his thoughts were on himself. He was thinking about another matter. When he obtained the 2 organs, he also left the demon god's armor and weapon behind. However, these were only the essence of the armor and weapon. These were 2 special gems. They were the same as what he saw in the stomach of the sea monster. However, he was now thinking about another matter. How could he gather all these things? What would happen after that? He didn't believe that the demon god would let others take away his organs so easily. Since Little Iron Egg had already cultivated to the point where he could live with his own organs, he must have extraordinary strength. Even if he was just a second medicine king, he must have some strength. While he was thinking about this matter, Little Iron Egg suddenly stood up. His body was covered with blood mist. At this moment, he looked like a real Azura, standing there with awe-inspiring killing intent. When you saw this scene, Lin Yuan knew that Little Iron Egg's current physical condition had become a special state. As long as he could complete the next step of his plan, his cultivation method would be considered a great success. At that time, no matter what kind of opportunity there was, Little Iron Egg would grab it in his hands. Thinking of this, Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He could feel that at this moment, no matter what, there was no way to stop him from moving forward. On the side, Little Iron Egg narrowed his eyes and glanced at Little Iron Egg. He didn't say a word. Chapter 1261. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and looked at them. The 2 of them said, "Since you're all ready, let's leave now." He was ready, but at this moment, the old turtle said, "Wait a minute, I still have some things to take away. Since I'm already a rebel, I might as well call for a more thorough appeal here. As long as this session is destroyed, the ones below won't be able to maintain." After saying this, he began to move. Seeing that this guy began to find all kinds of strange things in this session, Lin Yuan finally understood that there was another formation hidden here. Even if someone destroyed this place, it wouldn't take long for this place to be restored to its original state. This was an extremely powerful formation. If it was someone with an ordinary cultivation base, they wouldn't be able to do this at all. Lin Yuan could naturally see that this old turtle didn't leave any way out. He must have made up his mind to leave with him. Moreover, in this state, he was also considering what would happen if he really entered the next floor. At this moment, the old turtle narrowed his eyes slightly. Someone from above sent something down to deal with me. As soon as he said this, thunderclouds rolled in the sky of this session. Lin Yuan frowned and looked at the sky. He could see that there seemed to be something accumulating power in the sky. And the center of these thunderclouds was the vortex. When he saw this scene, Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. "I think they don't want us to enter the next floor, but the more they do this, the more curious I am." After saying this, he took a step forward. At this moment, he almost didn't have any special thoughts. He just wanted to enter the next floor. However, since the other party could make such preparations, they must have made some other arrangements. Lin Yuan took the first step forward. As expected, the moment he was about to step into the vortex, all the thunderclouds suddenly released thunderbolts at the same time and surged towards him. These bolts of lightning were like spiritual snakes, almost swallowing it whole. Lin Yuan just narrowed his eyes. He directly used his body to withstand these thunderbolts. Immediately, all the thunderbolts seemed to have no effect at this moment. Or rather, the moment they came into contact with his body, the light of these thunderbolts was directly absorbed. Whether it was Lin Yuan or some other people, they could clearly see the scene that appeared in front of them at this moment. Without the slightest hesitation, the old turtle stepped forward and said, "Mister, you're really something. You're actually able to withstand the lightning. You should know that this is the technique of a 5 lightning celestial immortal." 5 thunder celestial? Lin Yuan frowned slightly. He had never heard of this name before. Little Iron Egg, on the other hand, trembled involuntarily when he heard it. Are you talking about the ancient evil god, Five Thunder Celestial Immortal? He had heard of this name before, because there was a legend about this Five Thunder Celestial Immortal in their family, and even in the general knowledge. This guy was said to be both good and evil. At this time, his strength was unpredictable and unfathomable. Everyone who heard his name involuntarily took a step back. At this moment, Lin Yuan just smiled slightly when he heard this name. I'd like to see how powerful this so-called ancient evil god, the so-called celestial immortal, is. After saying this, he took a step forward without any hesitation. He even released a seven-colored light in front of him. He wanted to see how much difference there was between his strength and this so-called Five Thunder Celestial Immortals. Of course, this guy was stronger than him. At this moment, Little Iron Egg seemed to be unable to control his emotions. He stepped forward and said, "Supreme Being, let me have a try. I don't think this is called strength. Moreover, I feel that my cultivation method has reached a threshold and needs an opportunity to break through. Why don't you give this opportunity to me?" After he finished speaking, he ignored Lin Yuan and the old tortoise next to him and walked out directly. Seeing such a scene, almost everyone was stunned for a moment. At this moment, Lin Yuan just took a few steps back. Looking at Little Iron Egg rushing up directly, he finally felt a little satisfied in his heart. It seemed that his previous words were not in vain. This little guy finally reacted. The fact that he was able to rush forward in one step meant that this kid had already made up his mind and had some confidence in himself. In this state, no matter what this kid did now, he wouldn't be surprised. At this moment, Lin Yuan's every move seemed to have a profound meaning. Although he allowed Little Iron Egg to rush forward, he had to leave some experts behind to prevent any accidents from happening to Little Iron Egg. However, at this moment, the Thunderbolts seemed to be angered. They looked at Little Iron Egg as if they could no longer control their emotions. This was a baptism of thunderbolts. It was as if the thunderbolts began to spread all over his body and didn't stop at all. Lin Yuan had been watching all this. He knew that this kid was far from reaching his limit, but the old turtle was indeed a little worried about the current situation. This was because cracks had begun to appear on Little Iron Egg's body. These cracks didn't show any signs at first, but as more and more cracks appeared, the blood on his body began to form a special mist around him. The more it was like this, the more powerful the thunderbolts became. Little Iron Egg didn't know what to say when he saw this scene. Everyone could see that he was just barely holding on. At this moment, all of his movements, even the slightest movement, would trigger the thunderbolts. There was no room for him to move at all. Seeing this scene, Lin Yuan's expression changed slightly. He could clearly see what was happening in front of him. It wasn't like what he had imagined at all. He could even feel that this attack wasn't very pleasant. Little Iron Egg's strength couldn't be stopped at all. If he didn't take action now, Little Iron Egg might die here. Just as he was about to make a move, Little Bruiser let out a roar. "Hey, Little Bruiser. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.